sharing now.
Yeah.
Let me go
And
to the
yeah, all panelists can share, and we are live on YouTube now.
Okay.
So am I introducing you?
Actually, I'm going to introduce you Dr. Sarkar. So,
No, but why are you wearing that t-shirt?
Dr. Narayan is here. Hi, Marsha.
Hi, Raj. How are you?
Good.
Hi, Marsha.
Happy Father's Day. Namaste.
Hi, Yolanda. Good to see you too.
Father's Day. Happy Father's Day.
I cannot see Marsha here. She just disappeared. Okay.
I am here. I have a couple
Okay,
things I
well,
have to take care of
morning.
for today for family, but I will be on.
Wonderful. Nice to see the entire. So that is Smita, right?
Hi,
Yes.
hi, Dr. Narayan. How are you?
You're good. You're looking nice.
Oh, thank you. Hey, Tammy. How's it going? Nice to see you.
Thank you for being here. Can you change your name?
Oh, I just joined my dad's screen, so I'm going to be joining back from upstairs. So
Oh, I gotcha.
yes.
You're on the screen?
So Dr. Narayan, if with your permission, I was thinking because Bal Mukherjee said that my dad would kind of be the host. So I was thinking I would introduce dad and then dad would take the lead from there, if that works for you.
Everything works for me, whatever you decide.
Okay. I like your attitude. You have a good general attitude. So, well, considering everyone's time and being here for Father's Day, should we just get started then? Or do you want to wait a few more minutes?
No, carry on. We should be on time.
Okay, sounds great. So everyone, welcome to today's webinar. Happy Father's Day to everyone who is celebrating all the dads, the like dads, everyone who plays a role of a dad, and happy International Day of Yoga to everyone as well. So it is my name is Smita Chand, related to Naresh Chand, who many of you may know, and it is my honor and privilege to get to introduce my dad today. So my dad, by his background, is a pharmacologist, toxicologist. He worked in pharmaceutical drug development for 20 years and then at NIH for another 20. And he retired from NIH, I believe, in March of 2019. And since then, he has developed, I'm going to backtrack. Back in 1998, fall of 1998, my dad, who no one visually would have said was unhealthy, he had a massive stroke and nearly died. And it was a turning point moment in his life. And we're very lucky that in spite of his severe brain aneurysm and the extensive brain surgery that he survived with no lingering side effects, but it was a tipping point into changing his entire lifestyle. He ate a lot of fast food and, indulgent, decadent foods and whatever was in the office waiting room or in the kitchen and those kinds of things. That was his lifestyle. He was rather inactive. So he completely, like a light switch, which is, hopefully none of us will need that kind of event, but unfortunately it does take several people some kind of event to motivate them. That was my dad's event. And he began going to what he calls the Temple of Goddess Health, LA Fitness, regularly. He goes almost 6 to 7 times a week for 1 hour. He does a variety of exercises. He does his aquatic yoga, which if you ever get his ear, he has definitely talked to you about. And he also became very passionate about just changing his entire lifestyle. So my father eats mostly a Mediterranean diet, does a lot of, eats functional foods, focuses on Ayurvedic medicine and healing foods. And basically, he has, ever since the pandemic, he has been extremely passionate, and I've never seen him more committed to anything else than Dr. Narayan's life and yoga sessions. My dad originally attended once a day religiously. Did not miss a single session, and now he attends twice a day. So I wanted to personally just thank Dr. Narayan for his service to this extended community and to my father, because after retirement, I think a lot of people feel lost, and my dad has definitely found a sense of community and purpose with all of you. So on that note, on Father's Day, it is my honor to introduce my dad, Naresh Chand. Thank you.
Thank you, Smita. I just want to say 30 seconds for Dr. Krishna Benoda, who started this program 7 years ago. He's no more with us. So in his memory, we'll recite Gayatri Mantra for 30 seconds. Please join me. Om Bhurbhuvasva Tasya Viturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Now I take a privilege and pride to introduce Dr. Dilip Sarkar, who is very well known and a past chairman of Life in Yoga. And he is a vascular surgeon, cardiovascular surgeon, a heart surgeon, and he devoting his life for last 20 years or so. He reduced all of his stress. He reduced his biological aging, and he may be older than me, but he looked very younger to me. And I salute to him and I welcome to him for his own opening remarks today at this Life in Yoga session, which is an annual event. I hope we continue it, and especially Balmukand and Smita and Tammy will carry it on after us. Thank you so much, and let's welcome Dr. Dilip Sarkar.
Okay, hope you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm on the speaker view or a spotlight. You can put me on a spotlight also. It should be for everybody. Spotlight for all. Okay, my dear brothers and sisters of Life in Yoga, it's wonderful. Tomorrow will be a 7th International Day of Yoga, and today is a Father's Day. So most of you probably don't know the details, history, how the International Day of Yoga has evolved. So I was talking to Naresh and I told him that let me give you about 15 minutes. I will show you that you'll be surprised. A day does not come so easily from United Nations. People think, oh yes, Narendra Modi came on September 27th in 2014. He gave a talk to have a, hundreds and hundreds of prime ministers are coming to United Nations with multiple requests. So let me share with some slides and you will see the sequence, how it happened. And Rajan is smiling because Rajan is part of it too. And Rajan knows it very well. So I'm sure I have some Rajan here somewhere. Okay, let's see if you can see me. Okay, let me go back to my view. Okay. I need to see myself. Okay. Okay. You guys see the slides? International Day of Yoga history. And let me go ahead and tell you a little bit. The first, most of you probably know that the International Day of Yoga was announced by the United Nations General Assembly on December 11, 2014. And at that time, the permanent representative of the United Nations, Ashok Mukherjee, introduced the draft. And this is the first time in the history of United Nations, 177 out of 195 countries adopted it, and it became a day without a single vote. And then the Indian Minister of Ayush, and I'll show it to you what the Ayush is, Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha, Homeopathy, which was formed after Narendra Modi. They have, with their embassy of India all over the country, has started your International Day of Yoga. And International Day of Yoga, you'll see, and we are, me, Rajan, and a lot of yoga masters are involved in that. So here it is. Narendra Modi was giving the talk first that in September 27 in 2014, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, during an address session, has asked the General Assembly, about 50 countries, including US, Russia, and China, approved it. But remember, somebody must have brought it up to Prime Minister Modi. I know he's a yoga practitioner, but to make it International Day of Yoga, there must be some work was going behind the scene. So that's what I was going to tell you, what work was going behind the scene. October 14th was another day when United Nations General Assembly held an informal consultation to get a draft resolution before the December meeting. In that speech in Narendra Modi on the General Assembly, he said, this is a beautiful session and you can look at it, and this has been quoted everywhere in the yoga community. Yoga is an invaluable gift to India's ancient tradition, embodies unity of mind and body, thought and action, restraint and fulfillment, harmony between man and nature, holistic approach to health and well-being. It is not about an exercise, but to discover the sense of oneness with yourself, the world and the nature. By changing our lifestyle and creating consciousness, it can help in well-being. Let us work together, adopting the International Day of Yoga. Modi was always up in front. In Indian history, the Department of Health, and during March of 1995, had a department called Indian System of Medicine and Homeopathy. That was the name. And in March of 2002, it changed the name to Ayush. Ayush became an Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha, and Homeopathy. It was a traditional system of healing, but it was still under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. When Modi, after his lecture to the United Nations, remember that in September, in November, he created a separate ministry of Ayush with the Sripad Nayak, who was the minister, and he's still, now actually he is regarded as a minister of yoga. The first International Day was observed in June 21st, 2015. And Ayush, actually, Prime Minister Modi gave a sort of like a blank check to Ayush that go ahead and spread it all over the world through the Embassy of India. He led the first session in first International Day of Yoga, and it was a wonderful session. And look at these people here. He did it in Rajpath in New Delhi. There was a 2 Guinness Book of Record was set. 35,000 people participated from 84 countries. This is a picture from China. You can see how coordinated they are. Is each person there in China doing in the first International Day of Yoga. I'll show you a few more pictures in China also. So how they're in. So on the first International Day of Yoga, the Ministry of Ayush started a common yoga protocol. And this is a protocol, and you all have it. If you don't have it, you can Google it, and you will see that this is the one your Embassy of India is proposing. We had the first International Day of Yoga, the Embassy of India in Washington, DC, which Rajan was really the mover and shaker for that. And at the time, we had our ambassador, Arun Singh, was also very proponent of yoga. And this was the whole day. But it was in the National Mall. Look at the US National Mall by the Embassy of India. Here is the people doing yoga in the National Mall in front. The International Day of Yoga, and Rajan is somewhere, I know. And this is the ambassador, Arun Kumar Singh, very, very much proponent of yoga at the time. I was also a speaker at the time. This is the one which showing that in the mall. But behind the scene, what happened? Rajan is also part of it. This is a person from Portugal. And he goes by the name Jagadguru Amrit Suryananda. He first started called the World Yoga Day as a summer solstice in June of 21st in 2001. And he started inviting all the yoga masters of the world. Here he is, and I'm with him, and we are in the outside. We're doing a practicing. Very interestingly, when you practice in June 21st, it is called the summer solstice. Sun is in the top. Your shadow stays in the same place. It doesn't move. When you do the yoga, it's called the sthiram sukham. It's practicing on in this day. You can see Jagadguru invited most of your practitioner. So here it is. This is in 2013. I was invited twice, 2012 and 2013. Me and Rajan was there together in 2013. You can name it. This Harley Tellis, it's me. Rajan is here somewhere. This is Agent Nagendra. Anybody. This is your Amrit Desai, Subodh Tiwari. And year after year, he continued every year as a, World Yoga Day. This is in 2012. This is here representing. Rajan is on the next one probably. So I presented a paper called Yoga Therapy from Research to Treatment. And there's the 2013 we presented. There is another, all the masters are here. So I took a talk on yoga therapy for hypertension and cardiac problem. And he was consistent every June 21st on the weekend. He was presenting, and everybody, the yoga masters were there, was being introduced to this day on June 21st. So all the Indian yoga masters, they met on December 4 to 5th on 2011 at Bengaluru, India, and they proclaimed June 21st as a World Yoga Day. At the time, because Iyengar was alive, here is Dr. Nagendra, this is Ravi Shankar, this is Swami Ramdev. Jagadguru is still there. From Portugal, he came. And Gangadhar is there from Nimhans. Here's Subodh Tiwari. I know these are really the yoga masters who adopted the day on the June 21st. And then what happened? H.N. Nagendra, who was the yoga teacher of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, started telling him. But when you look back, even in the United States, in June 21st, there was a yoga session in the Times Square. This is the Times Square going on, and exactly on June 21st. Yeah, many of the yoga centers in this country did a 108 sun salutation on June 21st. So remember, this June 21st is being sort of groomed from your almost in year 2000. So when Modi brought it up, it was already 14 years in the work. So December 11, 2014, out of 193 members, 177 members approved establishing the International Day of Yoga. And Jagat Guru Swami Amrit Suryananda, he was present. He was present during the United Nations General Assembly. He was thought he might have to give a vote, but there was none. Here he is and present during December 11th. And there was Ayush has started doing the same thing in India. They started doing during the second International Day of Yoga, they're promoting a program which is called International Conference, and it was a Vigyan Bhavan in New Delhi in 2016. I was also invited there at the time. I presented a paper called Integration of Yoga in Healthcare Delivery System. This was their whole setup from Ayush. And remember, Ayush has a tremendous amount of funding from the ministry. And this is a wonderful conference, the site. And here is the whole conference set up. And here he is the mover and shaker for this International Day of Yoga. Because H.R. Nagendra was a prime minister of yoga teacher, and he brought it up to the prime minister, and he's exactly the behind International Day of Yoga. This is this is all made of flowers. This isn't for your 80 delegates came from 35 countries. You have 1,500 Indian yoga yoginis, and just pushing through all your embassy of India. Is exactly on the same second International Day of Yoga. Here it is, Ayush had gone. This is the Connaught Place in New Delhi. And people might know, this is one of the famous place in Delhi, and Connaught Place, all with the flower. They put down International Day of Yoga, 21st June 2016, New Delhi municipality. So there was a promotion after promotion. This is the thing Ayush was promoting. I'm sure Rajan has one too, and I have one. And then just want to finish you with a few slides for you to understand what is the impact of yoga in the whole world now. This is the first International Day of Yoga. Look, it is in Middle Eastern countries. And Saudi Arabia is doing a yoga. Indonesia is doing a yoga. You name it, This was a fascinating on the first International Day of Yoga in Paris. This is just underneath the Eiffel Tower. And these are all the same color, yellow color yoga mats. And these are the people doing yoga and laying down. Look at the design they made. This is only by the French. This is in Spain, celebrating the first International Day of Yoga. In New York, look at this. This is the United Nations building. On the first International Day of Yoga, they put down a picture, somebody doing yoga called International Day of Yoga. And this is obviously in Times Square. They just blocked the Times Square on June 21st. They do yoga in United States. This is obviously, who can be more coordinated? This is in China. The first International Day of Yoga, look at the Chinese doing yoga, all color coordinated. And this is in South Africa. I can go on and on, but because of the time, I said I just take only 13 minutes. If anybody has any question, I'll be glad to answer. And let me unstop sharing.
Let's give a big round of applause to Dr. Sarkar.
Thank you.
I wasn't aware of all these things.
No, nobody is aware of it.
That's very nice of you to do it for us. Now, a brief question may be asked if it is a burning question. Otherwise, the time is running out.
Please proceed. Please proceed.
I think,
Rajan, do you have any comments to make on this? Rajan?
No, everything is perfect. What can I say?
No, I said you were in the part of it. That's what I'm saying,
No,
He is the instrument.
See, what happens is when you're part of it and you know the history, you don't think too much about it. I didn't realize how many people didn't know about it.
Oh, yes. I have a really experience. Most of the people don't know it, You'll be surprised. Thank you.
Dr. Sarkar, thank you so much for sparing such a valuable time for all of us and educating us Thank you so much. Mr. Shah has a hands up until unless it's very related to Dr. Sarkar. Please unmute yourself and ask quick question, please. Or take out your hands. Anyway, let's move on. The next is I'm going to request Mr. Mahajan, my elder brother from Houston, to give his testimony about his heart conditions. And you will be surprised what he's going to tell us. I hope he's here.
He is here somewhere.
Yeah, I'm here.
Wonderful, Bhai Sahab. Namaste, welcome. And we are
Namaste.
looking forward to your testimony now. 3 minutes, 4 minutes, something like that.
Thank you, Nareshji. I am,
Can
Devi,
you get
can you
your
start your
video
video?
on, please?
yeah, media. Okay.
Ah,
Okay. I am 85-year-old now, and about 34 years ago, at the age of 51, had an open heart surgery where 2 of my arteries were found blocked 95% and other 2 70%. Over the years, 3 times stents were added to keep me going. 3 years back, during a checkup, I was told that there is lack of blood supply to my heart in some area, but there is no room to add more stents. It was my good luck that right at that time, in casual conversation, Mr. Ramesh Bhattacharya told my wife, who is a physician, that how Dr. Rajan Narayanan has helped him to overcome his problem of chronic fatigue syndrome, which he suffered for 35 years, as well as some other serious heart-related issues. Within few days of that conversation, Dr. Rajan Narayanan happened to visit Houston. I got examined by him through his BioWell technique and was told to do 2 practices, 10 minutes of breathing through my throat called Ujjayi Pranayam and 20 minutes of meditation with Im mantra daily, twice morning and evening. At the time of my examination, I was facing these 3 big issues: hiccups and belching, more so at night, could hardly walk 4 or 5 minutes without pain under my arms, and weight gain due to water retention. After doing these practices prescribed by Dr. Narayanan for about 7 to 8 weeks, my hiccups were gone and a slight improvement in my walking. To make my story short, within 4 months, I could walk 45 minutes to an hour and my weight started improving. Not only that, I did not need baclofen for my hiccups, torsemide for water retention, Hyzar for blood pressure, and Anora inhaler for my breathing. In other words, 3 medicines and inhaler was eliminated. For me, it is a real life-changing experience. 10 minutes of Ujjayi Pranayama and 20 minutes of meditation with Im mantra proved to be my lifeline. I am very happy to share my experience and may God bless Dr. Rajan Narayanan. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhai Sahab. Thank you so much. Thank you for your testimony, powerful testimony. Now I'm going to request Dr. Narayanan to give a testimony on behalf of Ramesh Bhattacharya. He is not here for some reason. So I'm going to request Dr. Narayanan to speak about his experience on prolapse of heart valve.
I will do that, but I think we also have a recording of it somewhere.
Yes, it does exist on your website, but I want to, on this occasion of regenerative medicine, part of the yoga, which we are discussing here, incurable diseases, So I would like to hear from you here on
Okay.
behalf of Ramesh Bhai Sahab.
Okay. I don't know how many of you know Mr. Ramesh Bhutada, but he is very well known in Houston and also among a large number of the Indian community in the United States as a whole. He's a very big philanthropist, and he came in his right from his upbringing in young age. He came with the attitude that everything he owned, he was only a trustee for the society. So he is one of those very rare individuals where running a very successful business, he is one of the very rare people, after whatever he needed for his family, he was capable of giving 90% of his income in charity in a single year, on years when he had a lot of profits come from his business. So that is the kind of man he is. He still is. The interesting thing for him was, when I met him, he was like 70 years old. And at the age of 35, he had started developing this strange episodes where suddenly one day, perhaps in a month, for a few hours or so, he will kind of freeze, nothing works for him, and he will be like that. And over the years, slowly what happened for a few hours, one day, rarely, started happening a little longer, like one whole day. And by the time he was 45, 50 years old, for one whole day, it wouldn't work for him. And then in 2016, when I met him, from 2014 onwards, 20 days in a month, he was a literal vegetable. He couldn't do anything at all. So this was his state where he was in. Now, being a person who is very well-to-do and he can access any resources anywhere in the world, he had early on, after about 5 years of looking through our conventional Western medicine, one of his close friends, a doctor, told him, listen, this condition has no resolution. They don't even understand it in modern medicine. You may consider looking out of the modern medicine at something alternative. So he was the person who actually invited S. Vyasa to come to United States and establish their first center in Houston, going back some 25, 30 years back. And then he went and spent 6 weeks in S. Vyasa, and they told him what to do and things, but nothing worked. He came back. Then about 15 years back, when Baba Ramdev came to the US, he was also a big contributor for Baba Ramdev. In fact, he is one of the trustees of Patanjali Yogpeeth USA. And Baba Ramdev came and stayed in his home. And also he later on, he attended his son's marriage in India. Baba Ramdev came and attended the marriage. So they were so close. And whatever Baba Ramdev told him to do, nothing worked for him. So in 2016, when we went there, the advantage that we had was we had this machine, this BioWell, and this basically reads their Nadi reading in their system and converts it into the communication of modern organ systems. We don't have to talk about Vata, Pitta, Kapha and things like that. We can directly talk about communication of the heart muscle or the communication of the lungs. We can talk about each organ system like that. So what we discovered over there was that it was a lack of afferent nerve sensitivity. So but other than the medical people here, they may not understand what afferent nerve sensitivity is. In our nervous system has 2 channels of communication. One, or the different parts of the body communicate to the brain, and the brain communicates back to the different parts of the body. So the afferent nerve is the one that communicates into the brain. So that is where we found his deficiency. So we had him do Ujjayi Pranayama for 15 minutes on the day when I met him. But the day I met him, he came late because he said today's chronic fatigue was so bad, I couldn't even get out. He was supposed to come at 4 in the afternoon. He came at 5. He could barely crawl out of bed at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And with the help of his wife, somehow he got ready and somehow came to meet me. So, and at the end of 15 minutes of Ujjayi Pranayam, he said, I don't have chronic fatigue anymore. And so the thing is, when he had come in, he told me that it was very bad. It was worst case of 10 out of 10 earlier in the day, but somehow I have dragged myself and come. Now it was like 6 out of 10. That's bad I was. And now after the Ujjayi Pranayama, I'm 0 out of 10. I'm completely restored. So the next morning I was flying out of Houston. He calls me at the airport and tells me, Rajanji, I want you to come to Houston and set up a yoga therapy facility. Let me know what you need. I'll take care of it. So that is how our Houston, this thing got started. Now, interestingly enough, this was only the beginning of the story. And when we get to my presentation, you will see why this is the beginning of the story. Because 9 days later, he calls me and the Ujjayi Pranayama is no longer working. Every day he is waking up with a deep level of chronic fatigue. Now, what had happened is when I had examined him at that time and I had spoken to him, he was using a CPAP machine. And that is something that people who have obstructive sleep apnea use, something that pressurizes the air so that you don't get sleep apnea. Now, the thing is, he asked me, should I continue using it? So I told him, if your doctor has told you to use it, continue using it. So what we noticed was the fatigue would come only in the morning when he woke up. So I told him, why don't you stop using the CPAP machine for a couple of days and see what happens? He stopped using the CPAP machine, and again, Ujjayi Pranayam work, he didn't have chronic fatigue. Now, another week goes by. And the other week that after another 9 days or so, he calls me from the hospital. What had happened was the previous few days, just one day before, in the early morning hours, he started having chest pain. And previously, having had a heart condition, he went to the hospital. And after checking out everything, they told him, you don't have any problem. They said, we are a little surprised because the previous November, this is the month of July in 2016 when I met him, but in November 2015, he had had a heart attack. So they told him, this is just a chest wall pain, and this is normal during recovery period people have, this thing. But there is nothing to worry, but we don't know why it is happening for you. You know, you had your heart attack in November. If at all, you would have had it in December or January, but not now. We don't understand. But they sent him home. And one of his good friends, a cardiologist, told him, listen, why don't you take 2 ibuprofen tablets or Advil before going to sleep? And maybe that pain won't come in the early hours. It will only come in the early hours of the morning, somewhere between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. And so the moment he started taking that medication, the Ujjayi Pranayama will not work anymore. And so literally on a day's notice, I went to Houston to meet him. And then when we examined him, I had with me a cardiologist with me at that time. So both of us together, we examined his whole history. And one of the things we saw was the CPAP machine that was given to him was not for sleep apnea. What had happened was, those of you who know about sleep apnea, the apnea-hypopnea index, it was only 3.4 for him. 3.4 is considered no sleep apnea. But it was given to him because his sleep architecture was not good. He was not getting enough deep sleep. So that is why they had put that in there. And so at that point in time, this particular cardiologist, who is also trained in yogic methods, he basically said that the chronic fatigue syndrome has something to do with the heart chakra also. The moment when he said about the heart chakra, and those of you who know me for a while know that while I tend not to intuitively look at people, I can look at people intuitively too. And I try to keep it objective with our machine measurement. So when I looked at him, through the intuitive this thing, I saw that his chakras had a lot of blockages. So the chakra vibration we do every day in our yoga session, we applied the chakra vibration to him. He simply did chakra vibration and Ujjayi Pranayama for 5 straight months December 26th of 2016, he was completely free of chronic fatigue. So it was 5 months of regular daily morning and evening. He would only do chakra vibration and Ujjayi pranayama, nothing else. And so that gives you a sense of, what yoga has to offer, the power of yoga therapy and what happened this thing. So I will leave it at that, and Nareshji, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Narayan, for it. Just a great testimony on chronic fatigue syndrome, which affects the life of millions of people in America. And similar thing may help other people in America and in the globe. Now I'm going to request Smita Chan to give her testimony about the long COVID syndrome.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So for those of you who did not meet me at the start of the presentation, my name is Smita Chand, daughter of Naresh Chand. And again, happy Father's Day to everyone who is celebrating. And I will be sharing my testimonial following my experience with COVID at the beginning of November. So I'm not sure if anyone else has lived through COVID or knows someone who has, but I got COVID, actually, interestingly enough, from my doctor. Back then, we thought cloth masks were enough, and we learned things as time progressed. And I had a very mild version of COVID. My worst symptoms were a mild bout of, forgive me if too much information, but diarrhea, followed by a temperature of 100 degrees. And we did everything we were supposed to. My oxygen never fell low. I really wasn't having any trouble breathing. And I just thought, well, that's it. That was COVID. I'm done. And I'm one of the very lucky ones. And I do feel very lucky. But unfortunately, 2 to 3 weeks following COVID, I began experiencing what I did not know had a name at that time. I began experiencing, it felt like someone was squeezing a helmet around my head. It was like the worst headache I'd ever had. I couldn't think. Extreme brain fog, extreme fatigue. I also, interestingly, and really in a very scary way, started experiencing changes to pretty much all of my senses. So I had difficulty seeing the same. So my vision was impacted, my hearing was impacted, even my proprioception, which is something that's really important for when we drive, that was impacted. I felt like if there was too many sounds, like if I was around my nephew and niece and everything was too loud, everything felt like sensory overload. And I really, really struggled. And it was honestly a very depressing time for me. I felt like, is this just going to be the rest of my life? Because I would be in these forums and I would see other people who are struggling with what they call long COVID or long haulers. And some of them were struggling for a year out at that time. So my dad kept telling me, and sometimes this is just the nature of being a child. I don't know if anyone can relate. You can watch the benefits in someone else. You can hear your father tell you to do something that's really good for you and that he believes will help you. But because it's your father or your mother telling you, you kind of resist. So I suffered through my symptoms for the first several weeks, unfortunately. And my dad is lovingly, he's very persistent. But as a daughter, I find him to be, of course, annoying. But he persisted nonetheless. And I'm so glad and grateful because I knew that he was doing these sessions. And it was interesting because my dad was actually exposed to me when I had COVID for 4 days nonstop. And he, in spite of his age, and really in spite of his age, he did not get COVID. So I really believe that what he was doing with Dr. Narayan and in Life in Yoga served as a protective measure for him. And I was so grateful that he didn't get it. And then finally, I agreed to do it. I did a abbreviated version with my dad first, because for some reason I just didn't feel comfortable being on a Zoom, which is silly. So I did it with him, and within 15 minutes, I was actually both shocked and disturbed at how quickly I felt better. He did the chakra vibrations with me, and then I don't remember the name, so please forgive me, but some of like the breathing exercises, and I just felt, yes, this. So I just felt much, much better. And I continued doing it, the 15-minute version, like the abbreviated version. I did actually join several sessions. My dad would be doing it, and then I would be doing it in the corner because I didn't want to log on my own. So, and it really did help. And I can honestly say it's something that I wish I had done more consistently. So I just wanted to end with one more thing. I think that whenever we begin something for our health or wellness, whether it be doing something like Dr. Narayan's Life in Yoga, or making a change to the amount of movement we get, or what we're consuming for our nutrition. Sometimes we go from zero to hero mindset. We think that if we can't do it every single day, then we're not going to do it at all. Or if we can't do the entire hour and a half, we're not going to even do 15 minutes. So if you are new to Life in Yoga, or if you know someone who you think would benefit from it, I think a lot of people might hear an hour and a half and get like, oh my God, I don't have an hour and a half. Tell them to start with 10 minutes. Tell them to start with 15 minutes and participate in what they can. And maybe, I think that would be a great way to get introduced to it. And so again, thank you to my dad. Thank you to Bal Mukherjee for leading these sessions. And of course, Dr. Narayan the most for his, I really tell my dad, and I'm not just saying this, no one is paying me to say this, but like, I am in awe that like, this is a free thing that is offered worldwide, because there's just such high value. So, yes, so thank you, Dr. Narayan, for your service, and to anyone who's able, so that we can support everyone being able to participate in this. I encourage you, if you are able, I don't even know how you donate, but I really believe that it's so important that we contribute to the efforts, because this is something really exceptional to be able to get for free. So thank you for having me, and happy International Day of Yoga.
Thank you, Smita.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Kumar will give his testimony, and I'm changing a little bit about my agenda. So please forgive me for making little adjustments. Kumar Sam, please.
Thank you. And it's a great honor and privilege for me to be speaking about my condition since last year. I have been having suffering from herniated disc for over 20 years. It started way back in the late 90s, and I've been having this for a long time, but it would come and go. And I joined this daily yoga class last April, just a couple of weeks after it started. So I'm one of the first few to be in this class. And I've been doing this every day since then. Sometime in early June, one morning I woke up and it was terrible pain. I couldn't even turn my neck 5 degrees. It was that bad. But I plodded on, and that evening also attended the class, and it went along, and it was getting worse and worse. The very next day, Dr. Rajan introduced the spinal mantra. He said there are a lot of seniors here, and many of you have spine-related problems, and introduced that. And it was the first time he did that in the class. And then it was for about 7 or 8 minutes he did that. And right after he did that, he asked for a feedback. And I had a good 40–50% relief. And I was delighted because I could turn my neck, both sides. So when I told him this, and then he said, oh, yeah, very good, but be careful, this is temporary. For you to have this term permanently taken away, you have to do this for months. So religiously, I did this. I've been doing this since then. I have not stopped it. And little by little, it has improved from the 20%, 30%, 40%. Today, I'm almost 90–95% okay most of the times, including about 6 months back, I was still having some radiating pain in my arm. And Rajan told me to do the spinal Ujjayi pranayama. So I started doing that, and within 2 months, that radiating pain is also gone. So I'm assuming that in the next few months or whenever, I'll be 100% free. And but now I also understand I'm only a bunch of vibrations, and I don't have to really care about all these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kumar Saab. Thank you so much. It's a wonderful, outstanding testimony. Now I'm going to request Tammy to give her testimony, please.
Can I say something before that, please?
Please, of course.
The thing is, you see, this is the second case that I'm hearing about reversal. You see, what happens is in conventional medicine perspective, if you have a damaged organ, you have to only replace it or do something, you cannot rebuild it back. Now, the very interesting part is we had another case in Houston where a person's knee got restored with the spinal mantra. So the two cases of the spinal mantra. And of course, we also have two cases of meniscus tear, which was recommended for surgery. Just by doing pranayam, they completely healed themselves. It took about 4 to 6 months to heal, but it completely rebuilt itself. Please go ahead, Tam.
Tammy, it's your time. Turn.
Hi there. Thank you, everyone. That's so awesome. Kumar, we're all just a bunch of vibrations. Dr. Naresh invited me here today for a testimony on my results that I received through working with him and with Dr. Rajan. I made a little slideshow, if it's okay that I share the screen. Is that okay?
Please.
Okay. It's a little slideshow. So yoga for harmony and peace. I have better health and reduced inflammation through yoga. Presented by Tammy Seban. I did not know that was transformational life coach, medical administrator, aspiring holistic practitioner. My journey to a clear, organized mind began here. Thank you. I did not know that was going to work. Dr. Naresh Jain invited me here today to share this testimony on my remarkable health and life improvement from doing twice daily health and yoga through functional nutrition, right? That he also helped me implement. For a minute, living as a medical professional, I build and credential surgery centers with entrepreneur surgeons. And that position comes with a lot of stress that I had mostly managed with prescription medication. That stress turned into anxiety, depression, panic attacks, psoriasis. There is a lack of good night's sleep. Often my allergies and asthma have become worse from just being so busy in this high performance space and my diet. In 2020, I went through a life change in what I was doing and what was happening, how I felt, what was happening in the surgery centers. Things that were going on around me just weren't making sense. To clear the brain fog from this medicated state that I had been operating in for 6 years, I stopped taking all the pills, all my medication. I had medication for anxiety. I had 2 pills for anxiety. I had medication for depression. I had for the panic attacks that went with the anxiety and the depression, or I was hospitalized. I've been hospitalized for panic attacks. My psoriasis, I had creams that were $200 for a tube of cream for psoriasis. My ankles, I have pictures that I just couldn't put out here, but I know I probably should have. Just my face, my elbows, my ankles, everything. I stopped taking all the medicine even right after that. So I got rid of all that medicine for everything, allergy medicine. I had prescription allergy medicine. I had over-the-counter allergy medicine. I have a nebulizer. I have albuterol. I had the other inhaler that you take during the day or every morning, right? Twice a day. So I stopped taking all of this medication for the most part in like a matter of like 60 days, right? They just weren't making sense. And I stopped taking all these medicine. I was awakened to what was going on more in the world. And I saw what was possible watching videos of like Dr. Dispenza, seeing what you could heal yourself. I kept getting these rashes, and it found out it was related to anxiety. So I stopped eating meat. I learned that my food was maybe hurting me more than helping me. I drank a lot of soda, right? I began a new life of this self-awareness path of my health and my mind. I'm not gonna go on there yet. Dr. Naran, what I did is Dr. Dispenza brought me to this BioWell device. And I said, okay, I'm in the medical industry. I've worked with devices all the time. I buy them, we move, whatever. So I'm going to get one for myself. So I bought a BioWell and I'm going to heal myself because I'm not taking medicine anymore. Dr. Naranian, so I bought it. This is what brought me to Dr. Rajan, right? So I needed this monitoring device and I knew what this was capable of. So I bought one. He gave me an introduction on how to use this new device. And as we spoke, my trials and tribulations of 2020 came out. And he heard my story and why I wanted the BioWell. He had asked me, like it was one of his babies and he had to know why I wanted one. I mentioned that I wanted to do yoga, but I didn't know what it was or how to do it. He just so happened to be producing 2 live yoga sessions a day. And to this day, I'm still so elated about the synchronicity that brought me here. As what happened, the way I met Dr. Shand is that he consulted me for a friend of mine that had cachexia sarcopenia, and he was terminally ill. So I talked to Dr. Shand and we talked about a lot, and Randy is alive now. He's still alive and he's doing well. I heard him, I know, right? I heard him discuss the neuropathy and sarcopenia after class often, right? So yoga was like a community of just healing energy and information everywhere. As we discussed more of the holistic healing, I learned Dr. Shand's passion for Ayurvedic remedies and for functional nutrition. As I said before, I had stopped eating meat, so I became a vegetarian. However, I didn't know how to be a vegetarian, right? I've been eating packaged foods and meat and all this stuff that was rush all the time. So I was pasty white, I had low energy, and I was desperate to learn how to get my color and balance back, right? I thought I was fixing myself by not eating meat and getting rid of all this, right? You remember this, Dr. Shand.
I'm just listening. Connection ledu.
Dr. Shand coached me on functional nutrition habits, the need for them, what functional nutrition was, right? There's actually a need, what food is important for, what food does to us. He taught me how to fast, which I really found a lot of value in, and I've usually fast like every 2 days. And then the value of turmeric. We monitored and implemented and changed the recipes. And as you see me now, it worked and I have my color and my good vitality. I am pleased to report what I got for 6 months of doing daily yoga practice with chakra vibrations, meditation, and functional eating habits every day. That I did resolve my stress and anxiety pretty quickly, right away. Once I got past that nadi cleansing, I was full of them. Let me tell you, it took like a month and a half for the stop having so much. My panic attacks and no more panic attacks. I don't have panic attacks or depression. Psoriasis and the rashes are gone. Now if I get, it's usually a mosquito bite. No more vitamin or amino acid deficiencies. No supplements really. New practice and discipline. That was a good life lesson, right? To sit down, cheeks in the chair and just do it. And meditation. I sleep soundly through the night. The asthma and allergies no longer require medication. Since I do this breathing twice a day, I'm always a couple hours away from any relief that I would need. I breathe better, and especially during yoga, a Hai Me Mam mantra really, really works. And it just amazes me because it's like butter. It just lights up. Better functional food choices that I like and I enjoy. I found calm through meditation for the anxiety on top of breathing to open up that inflammation and let out the blood flow through. Through learning yoga, I am empowered now and more confident in myself, and I'm here to help bring yoga to the forefront where it belongs for more excellent human health. Thank you, yoga family, for all you do to give us this freedom of enlightenment with the lesson that we do have a purpose here on earth. And thank you for creating the possibility for us to be informed and armed with these vitality tools every day. And I just want to say, Dr. Rajan, thank you so much for everything you do for all of us, and let it go, right? Reset your mind. You helped me reset mine to a healthy life. And I'm so grateful and blessed. So
Thank you, Tammy, for an outstanding testimony. May I request Dr. Dhar to give his testimony over the next 3 minutes, and 3 o'clock, Dr. Narayan will start his session.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Nareshan, and many thanks to Dr. Rajan and Life in Yoga. This has been a great life turnaround for me. I was a high flying, high energy entrepreneur back in 2019. I was doing a fundraising round for my startup that I had been building for the last 5 years, since 2014. And after a viral fever, I had extreme fatigue, and the post-viral fatigue never went away. I had inflammation in the body. I had heart palpitations, exceeding like 120, and thumping of the heart, and so many other issues. Brain fog was one of the key ones. And it was basically turned out to be, the inflammation of the brain tissue. So long story short, I was lucky that I met Dr. Rajan through a friend of mine, Shobit Verma, and life was truly hopeless. I could have been bedridden like Mr. Ramesh Bhutada for the rest of my life. But luckily I met Dr. Rajan through Shobit, and we went through the yoga therapy and the chakra vibrations and Brasika and Ujjayi Pranayama and many other techniques. They brought substantial relief to me. I'm pretty much 99% fit now. Allergy season does bring me a little bit of issues, but all in all, I have recovered substantially. Ever since I started doing these mantra-based meditation, the transcendental meditation technique, and that Dr. Rajan taught me, my creativity has exploded, and the quality of ideas and quality of inventions I make now. I've made like 4 new inventions in the last 6 months, and all of them are like tremendous. So many thanks to Dr. Rajan for all that. And ever since I recovered, it became a mission for me to promote Life in Yoga's mission and take it to the rest of the world. And that has been a journey we have traversed together through all of your support. And we'd be very thankful that we continue this journey and make this a mission that the world starts to pursue with greater rigor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Balmukam. Now, Dr. Narayan doesn't need any introduction. He's the greatest human being as far as I know in my life. He's a giver, and he does so much. I don't know where he gets so much of energy to teach 3 sessions every day. So he is blessed with energy, positive energy to heal the world. And he is an executive director of Life in Yoga. He is a yoga scientist, an innovator. He devises these mantras for healing the heart, lung, the brain, neck, spine. My God, it's remarkable. It's in the beginning, it is in its infancy. So with this, I welcome Dr. Narayan to give his talk for 30 minutes, and then we'll move on from there. So we have finished the testimonials anyway. Thank you so much.
Namaste, everyone. Before I begin the presentation, I want to introduce Dr. Balmukund Dhar properly.
Please do so.
He is a PhD from Johns Hopkins, who went on to do postdoctoral fellowship at MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And his field is what is called material sciences. So in other words, he's the man who understands physics and chemistry and nature of particles. So as he told you last year, when we met him, he had 9 patents to its credit. And I think now he has about a dozen of them. And so you can understand where he's coming from. And so he looks at everything that we do from the scientific eyes. And given my own training background, I like to do it the same way, look it through the eyes of scientific, how we can validate, how we can measure. And this is where life in yoga is very, very different. And you will see for a moment once I get into the presentation where we do this. So I'm going to start by sharing the screen over here now. Okay, here we go. So the title that somehow got selected, I just saw this morning. So I just prepared the presentation today, like a couple of hours back. So it was, how did PM come over there? I don't know what it is. Anyway, application of yoga for addressing incurable and difficult disorders. So that is the presentation title. So once we, the outline that I have over here is, the first subject is yogic understanding of the nature of existence and the source of difficult and incurable disorders. Only if we know the source can we really understand the magnitude and work towards healing it. Second is yogic approach to dealing with the source issues. And then finally, I will give some examples. And now, as Dr. Naresh Chand was saying, I'm literally going from one event to another event to another event. And so when I look at the examples, I have all the data and all of that. I need to put them together. But I figured that in this context over here, within the short time, I'll simply tell you about it rather than give you all the details over there. So the first thing about the yogic understanding of existence and source of difficult and incurable disorders, the yogic understanding of existence is all of creation is a dynamic distributed computing system where each element in creation is a nodal computing unit wirelessly connected that does its contribution towards a larger flow of the cosmos. In other words, each one of us has a program within, and the way you lead your life and you fulfill that program contributes towards a cosmic flow. So every one of us is special and the cosmos needs every one of us. So now, if that is the philosophy of that, let's look at how Yoga Sutras explains creation. It starts from God. There are different names used in the Yoga Sutra for God, and you will see over there numbers over there like 4.4. 4.4 is where the sutra talks about how out of the Purusha or Ishvara or Prabhu comes out Prakriti. That is the first creation, which is energy. And as we know, matter and energy are two sides of the same coin. And from that initial program creates several multiple programs, some of which are embodied, others which are disembodied, some which are inanimate. All of them together create this massive cosmic flow. So by being true to our purpose, by being connected, and many of you know from a religious perspective, you talk about being in sync with your conscience. There is a concept in yoga that you can connect within, which means the implication is you have a transmitter receiver within you. And if you listen to it carefully and activate it properly, and deep sleep and meditative practices are the things that help towards it, then in which case you figure out what your purpose in life is, you fulfill it. And once you fulfill it as a pure observer without any expectations or reactions, then finally, of course, you go out of the birth cycle. And so that is how the Yoga Sutra explains it. Now, the implication of the relationship is that each person is born to play a specific role for maintaining the cosmic flow, what they call as the Swadharma. And then, of course, the awareness guides us towards through the intuitive sensing, namely through meditative practices, good sleep, being aware of ourselves. That awareness guides us towards our specific role. But when the mind comes in the way and it gets distracted, we deviate from our role, and the conflict creates ill health. So deviation from the cosmic purpose is the cause of health disorders. Traditional medicine model separates two types of disorders from two types of stresses. Pardon that error in spelling. So the traditional medicine model goes as follows. Behind our physical body, our gross body over here, there is the subtle body, which is simply vibrations. And behind the vibration body is the causal body, or what we will say our programmed entity. And just in order to make sure everybody understands this correctly, I'm going to give an analogy over here. Think of your computers. When the computer has no power in it, your computer is loaded with a lot of programs that is sitting within it. So you can think of the programs loaded within it with no power in as the causal body or the spiritual entity. Now, once the power is turned on, then the program begins to activate. The computer starts humming. That is the subtle body, the vibration body. And then eventually, once the humming is done through after a minute or so, everything depicts itself on the screen. What you see on the screen is the equivalent of the gross body. Okay, so that is the way in which you can think in terms of how our bodies are constructed. Our physical body is simply the screen of the program that is there within. And the program within, it can only when it is activated with energy, it can express itself. Otherwise, it is in a different domain as a causal body. So any conflict between the causal and subtle body is thought to cause deep-rooted stress that creates difficult health conditions. However, if there is a conflict between the subtle and gross body, then the issues are less severe stress, and it manifests in disorders that are easier to manage. So let's look at the next slide. How is this measured in traditional medicine systems? By the way, the traditional medicine model and yoga model are one and the same. So the measurement in the traditional system medicine model is we cannot really measure the causal body, but we can measure the vibrations in the system. That vibration is what makes this happen, the gross body. So this is what is called Nadi reading in Ayurveda and yoga, and Chinese system uses the same thing, but they use a different terminology. And today, of course, we have what I call a measurable way of doing this. That is what is called electrophotonic imaging. Dr. Konstantin Korotkov is the one who provided the machines for us. He's the one who makes all of the device this. So by putting the finger in, we are able to get your finger is inside an electromagnetic field. So we get like in the aura of 10 fingers, they're called the biograms, and they're all split into wedges. Like you can see over here, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Each of these wedges are a different organ system communication. Like for example, this 4 over here in the thumb is the throat, how your throat is feeling. Okay, so and if you look at the top over here, this segment is the cerebral zone cortex. Okay, so we can actually measure like this many systems, and we are able to measure 41 organ systems through this mechanism. And so this is where we are able to tell what is going on in the system. Now, we have to be very careful when we use this machine, because what happens is this machine cannot be used as a diagnostic tool. Why can't it be used as a diagnostic tool? Because your vibrations in the body change the moment your mind changes. And if you're dehydrated, it'll look one way. You just have a glass of water, it'll look completely different. Okay? And so what happens is, when we use this system, we only use this system after a proper medical diagnosis through the conventional medicine system. And what do we use this system for? We use it for pre-post measurement for any yoga protocol we use, because then what happens is within a short period of time, we can see what a yoga protocol is doing for somebody. This is how we measured Mr. Mahajan, who gave the testimony before, and how we arrived what he should be doing. And this is the way in which we measured Mr. Ramesh Bhutara. This is the way in which we measured Bal Mukund Dhar, whom you heard. So all of them, this is the thing that helps us. So the traditional medicine and the electrophotonic imaging measurements can only measure resultant impact on the organ system and not the communication of the deeper conflict. What do I mean by that? Let me go back over here. You see, this is what we are measuring over here. When you have a conflict between the causal body and the subtle body, we can only measure the impact is on the causal body. We can only measure this. We cannot measure the root cause. Okay? So now you can understand from a modern medicine perspective, you're measuring here, but what is happening here is being affected by here, right? So this is the idea that we have over here. So if you can look at the zone of the working of different approaches, when we work with deeper practices of yoga, we are working at this level. And that impacts this level, and that's what we are able to measure. And of course, here is where we work with our general palliative yoga practices. Many of you have heard that if you have some issues, first start by attending our daily free yoga sessions. That itself will take care of most of it. And many of you know that our yoga sessions are very unique. We have not only chakra vibrations, we have the respiratory mantra, we have the circulation mantra, we do the spinal mantra. So in other words, we have packed in there a system of various practices which can help from a palliative purpose for many of the people, right? And then, of course, in a modern healthcare system, you're working with the gross body. Now, what is the problem over here? When you're working with the gross body, you're giving palliative care to the gross body, but you're unable to resolve the problem permanently. So you're keeping the person fully dependent on the medication for a chronic problem for their lifetime, right? So if we can address it over here or here, then in which case we can make the person completely medication free. And as Mr. Mahajan was saying, while he was being treated over here, he had 14 medications. And by the time he had gone through 4 or 5 months with what he did, 4 of the medications had dropped off, right? So the thing is, you see, that is where we see how this goes. I'm going to give you a slight explanation of how the Nadi system works over here with respect to our general yoga practices, which are palliative in nature. Now, there are 2 important Nadis. You know, when we talk about the Nadi system, let me go back over here. We talk about 5 levels of communication. And the 5 levels of communication, I have in previous sessions talked about the names of it from the Ayurvedic perspective: prana, pana, vyana, udana, samana, right? So the thing is basically in these 5 levels, the 2 levels which are very, very important over here in this thing. One is what is called samana, and the other is what is called prana. What is samana? Samana is nothing but the gene expression. The samana vayu is what comes out of what in the yoga system is called the working of the Ida and Pingala Nadi. Ida representing the genes, the Pingala Nadi, the epigenetic factors, and the Ida and Pingala Nadi together expresses along the Sushumna Nadi, and that is called the Samana Vayu. Now, with the gene expression, in order for the gene expression to fulfill itself, electricity is needed, the energy is needed. And that energy comes from the Prana Nadi. And what is the Prana Nadi? It is just the central nervous system. So the thing is basically, in our general yoga practices, these are the places we are looking to hit. Right along the middle of the body are the 7 chakras, and along the spine is the Prana Nadi. The 7 chakras are sitting right in the Sushumna Nadi that carries the Samana Vayu, and you have along the spine the Prana Vayu that is being carried. Now, obviously, the Sushumna Nadi cannot function without drawing the energy from the Prana Nadi, right? So when we say that, what it really means is, while the energy is produced in each cell in the body, which cell will get how much of oxygen, and all of that is determined by the brain. And the brain is the central nervous system that is regulating to the nervous system. So that is how the Prana Nadi determines how much of energy will come to each area of organs. Now, from these chakras, there are connections that go lower down into the muscle and the fluid circulation in the body. And of course, those are called the Apana Vayu as well as the Vyana Vayu. So those are the ones that go and fix. So what do? Our general yoga practices are only working in this domain. And the purpose of it is directing prana in an optimal way through the nervous system. That is all that we are doing in our regular yoga practices. Okay. Now, when it comes to deeper related issues, then what we have to do is we have to go into the area of what is called Udana Vayu, or our cosmic connectivity. In fact, without our cosmic connectivity, we are nothing. And we know from a modern medicine perspective that if, as a neurologist explained to me one time, that if an average person doesn't sleep for 9 continuous days, the person's immune system will be so compromised, the person will fall down dead. Okay. So but the sleep is the source of our adaptive immune system. And actually sleep is the source of strengthening our immune system. So that goes along through the Atmanadi. And the Atmanadi you can see in the picture over here. The Atmanadi from the top of the head comes along the front of the head and comes along. And this is where the area where you have the big star is where you have your cosmic transmitter. And some of you over here who are, familiar with the Vedic hymn called Narayana Suktam, it describes it as over here. So this is where the transmitter is. These areas below are areas of what are called siddhis, or special abilities. When people have this area between the asterisks over here and here, this is the area that contains your cosmic awareness. This is called Atma Vidya. Atma Vidya in this thing. And here you have the ability to sense vibrations. Here you have the ability to make sense of vibration. And here you have ability to project intent. So if you meet somebody who has the ability to project intent, but not these things, the person will be a very high performer. But if a person has all of these active, they become a Sai Baba. They can materialize stuff. Okay. So the thing is, you see, this is how in the nature of creation when it is all active. And why are these there for some people and not for all? Because each one of us has a different role in creation. So we are only supposed to be honest to our purpose and do our job and move along. We are only instruments of the divine flow. So in any case, so when along this Atmanadi is where our cosmic connectivity is there. That is the source of the immune system strength. Now, when there is a conflict between that is where the causal body is coming from. When there is a conflict between that and the gene expression over here, that is when what ends up happening is you end up developing very difficult to cure condition, autoimmune conditions, and all of those kinds of conditions. So to deal with that, we deal with 3 different ways in which our approach deals with. One technique is personalized mantra-based meditation. Another technique is chakra vibrations. And the third thing is a generic immune system correction mantra. Now, the personalized mantra meditation is individual to each person. And I'll give you a few examples of it. Bal Mukund was telling you about his experience, how the personalized mantra helped him. Now, those of you who don't know my own history, from the age of 13 till about my mid-40s, I used to be severely asthmatic. And I was allergic to so many things. And a little bit of dust, pollen, and if I had pineapple, if I had grapes, they would all give me an asthmatic attack. Now I can eat pineapple. Now I can even eat grapes. Nothing happens. And now, even during allergy season, I go out for a jog. Nothing happens. So the thing is, basically, when I say nothing happens, I don't come with an asthmatic attack, but that I can still feel that this may be something that is causing an allergy. And so when I come back in, I just do a nasal wash and cleanse it out. But the thing is, basically, it's not like I'm 100% cured. But what it is, I'm 99% cured to the extent that allergens that affected me before, if a little bit of it hits me, it won't bother me, right? So the thing is, basically, the way to change that, I did it, is through personalized mantra-based meditation for myself. Now, the chakra vibrations is a little different. The chakra vibration instantly removes the conflict between the causal body and the subtle body. It is instant. It doesn't have to wait. Okay. And so what happens is, but it is also somewhat temporary in nature. When I say it is somewhat temporary in nature, okay. I'm going to mute everyone so that they won't be able to unmute themselves. Okay, so let's go back now. Okay, so in the case of personalized chakra meditation, as I said, it is instant. So those of you who have been doing the chakra vibration, you can immediately feel a difference when that happens. And of course, we follow up with a sequence of practices which are meant to take advantage of the clear temporary chakra cleansing. And then we do other practices which will kind of boost the healing process in there. And that is why we have a certain sequence of how we go about it, right? So any case, now there is another technique which is a little more permanent in cleansing. This is something called, we call it as karma cleansing technique. And this actually, interestingly, originated in UCLA in California within the psychologists and psychotherapists there. They created a system called Rainbow Bridge Meditation. And we adapted the Rainbow Bridge Meditation and we created a way for us to be able to work with it a little more efficiently and easily for people. So we created the karma cleansing technique. Now that takes a while to teach, and that is the reason we have not been doing it regularly, and it'll differ for different people. So we have been doing the chakra vibrations, but during our retreat, that is something that we can share with a lot of people. And when we do it for multiple days together, then in which case it becomes easy for you. Now I'll give you an example over here. Actually, but the example is the next section. Okay, I'll go there next. I'll give you the example right here. It makes sense. You see, I had one time when I was in Houston, there was a lady who came in. The husband is a physician and the wife is the one who runs the physician office. So this lady came and visited me. She was in her early 60s. And one of the indications for us of any kind of what we call mental health issues. By the way, the chakra vibrations are extremely useful for mental health issues, okay? Because mental health issues are characteristic of a conflict between the causal body and the subtle body, okay? So what happened is, for this lady, and one of the things when we take our intake form is, we ask a question, do you have any sweating in your palms? And that is highly indicative for us. Sweating in the palms, even if it is sometimes, it is indicative of some kind of mental health issue, particularly associated with anxiety disorder. Okay. So what happened was, in the intake form for this lady, we saw she had sweating in the palms sometimes. So what we did was, we said, normally in Houston when I work, we have Dr. Anjana Dhingra, we have Hema Chandrasekhar, and we have sometimes other people, Mr. Abhay Jain and others who are available. So typically what we do is we work in 3 rooms concurrently. We have 3 people who come for therapy in 3 different rooms. And usually I'm going from one room to another while the therapists there are taking care of each person individually. So when I came into this room, I looked at it and I said, this person needs chakra vibrations. Then what happened was Dr. Anjana Dhingra was the one who was dealing with this patient. So I said, I will come back. And I went to the next room and I came back after another 20 minutes or so. So when I came back, Dr. Anjana Dhingra, since I had mentioned about chakra vibrations, she did the chakra vibration 10 times in each chakra. And nothing happened for this person. And what is the manifestation for this person? The person had pain in various parts of the body, almost all parts of the body, and that pain would never go away. So when I came in, I looked at her and we went through the process. As you have seen, each day we do different number of chakra vibrations is not the same. So we did the different one. And in the Swadhisthana chakra, which is the sacral chakra behind the place where we urinate, there we had to do chakra vibration for her 42 times. And once we had done all the chakras relative to what she needed, the other chakras were much less. Once we had done it, at the end of it, she said, all my pain is gone. So the thing is, basically, this is the nature of how instant results can come from chakra vibrations. And but of course, it is temporary. So people need to do that for a long time. And of course, what happens is when we work with chakra vibration, we are counting on what we call, by cleansing that thing continuously over a period of time, slowly it goes and cleans backward the conflict between the causal and the subtle body. So that's the principle on which we work. Now, the generic immune system correction mantra is a slightly different element. This is based upon what we understand when there is an immune system compromise. In the yoga system, there is a point called the Murdhanya point. In the Murdhanya point, our cosmic connectivity is the source of our immune system. In the Murdhanya point, there is a blockage or a tripper that trips the immune system. And so that is the cause whereby the immune system goes wrong. So what we do is we use a singular mantra in order to clear the Murdhanya point to make the immune system normal. Now, this mantra I will not share with you here for one simple reason. The reason is, if this mantra is done and you don't have an autoimmune condition and your Murdhanya point is clear, it will go and block the Murdhanya point. And so it is not a safe practice to do. And whenever we work with people, we have them do we tell them that every month we have to go and monitor and check it, because this is not something that can be overdone. And any case, so that is the three kinds of techniques that we use over here. Now, let's see. The next one is examples. So I will go on straight to the examples. I gave you the case of the allergic asthma for myself and for Bal Mukund, and in his case for chronic fatigue, what he found. And actually, I will even give you the case where in the case of Mr. Mahajan's thing, it was basically the Im mantra that resolved his heart-related issues. Now, the Im mantra works for many people for heart-related issues, but not 100%. That is why we have to monitor the pre-post with our BioWell. Now, the next one is in the case of chronic fatigue syndrome for Mr. Buttada, we use the chakra vibration that I already mentioned. Now, I'm going to give you a very interesting case of a person who was in his early 60s, who still is in his early 60s. So this man last year, this person came to us because this person had a very unusual problem. And that unusual problem was his bowel movements would always be watery. It is worse than diarrhea. It is like, it goes like water. Whatever he eats goes out like water. In other words, there is no water retention happening in his colon. The water is not getting absorbed in the colon. So what had happened for him is, he mentioned to me, like about 8 months earlier, he had, when he went to the doctor gave him a steroid to have for 6 weeks, actually prednisone. So once he took it for 6 weeks, that actually stopped the watery bowel movement, and it repaired it. There was no problem for 6 weeks. But after 6 weeks, once he stopped the prednisone, again, the watery bowel movement started. So there was no way to cure it, and this is the way he had been. Now, we kind of reviewed his history. And when we reviewed his history, we found that he also had itchiness in his skin. And this was there right from the time of his college days, where he used to have this itchy skin. And then the other thing which we also recognized was that down the road, he had some eye-related issues or some other things, but all of them indicating that there is some kind of underlying reactivity of some kind. So we looked at it as it's, it looks like an autoimmune condition. So for him, we gave him the generic, immune system correction mantra. And he did the correction mantra. We also saw that a second practice would help, the Bahya Kumbhak practice, but we told him don't do it now because we want to test one at a time. So he did the generic immune system mantra, and after a period of 1 week, he reported to me that he was very surprised that his watery bowel had started becoming like semi-solid kind of thing. And so we let it go for 2 weeks. And then that had become consistent. And the first week he found that on 2 days out of 7 days, he had watery bowel movements. The other day it was semi-solid. Next week it became no day watery movement. And it was it had become more consistently semi-solid and becoming better and better in the day. Then, of course, after 2 weeks, we added the Bahya Kumbhak exercise. And with these two, in a matter of about 3 months, his bowel movements became completely normal. Nobody from modern medicine can explain why it happened, but from a yogic perspective, we can explain. So this gives you the kind of flavor for what our yoga therapy and how to deal with difficult conditions, how we deal with them. So with that, I will stop over here.
Okay, well, let's give a big hand to Dr. Raj, and thank you so much. You're always enlightening. I mean, I have to go through it a couple of times to get it to the nitty-gritty of it. This is wonderful. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to request Dr. Marsha Willis to give her presentation. She is a clinician, a yoga therapist, a yoga scientist, and she's the chair person for the Life in Yoga, chairman of the Life in Yoga at present. So with that, she doesn't need any introduction. She will enlighten us with the idea of how to go think about out of box and that sort of things. And I have listened to her talk a few weeks ago. I was blessed. And I am pretty sure many of us would like to hear a clinician's perspective for yoga, how to bring it to the common marketplace or to the life of everybody. Let's welcome Dr. Marsha Willis.
I think you're muted, Dr. Willis.
I'm the one who did that. Let me take care of that. Okay. Now you can unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon. Let me see too, because I was not able to pull up, really, I'm not pulling up my my screen share because I may have signed in. When I came into the program, I apologize. I tried to do some things for family that I had to do before it started. So I may have signed in. I'm not sure that I'm able to get my screen share up here. I may have to even sign out or sign in, but let me
No, I think it should be fine. Right, all the permissions are there, so you just have to start sharing screen and it should be fine.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get up the
Dr. Willis?
Yeah.
Should I go ahead with my presentation in the meantime you figure out?
Yeah, that's fine. The other, I just want to make a couple comments
Sure.
besides anyway. One is to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us, and thank everyone on behalf of Life in Yoga that there's so many people who are really working diligently on a daily basis to make our organization, I think, just an incredible, it's just blossoming into something that's, I think, making all the difference. And what struck me, I was just thinking of something. When you talk about this being an international yoga day of recognition, I think what it does is it really gets all of us to try to speak across the world the same language. And one of the things we know when I think about yoga is it's just very similar to so many other things. At first, if you don't speak the language, it's very difficult to understand how it could even apply. And yet at the same time, this recognition, I think, just shows and verifies that it is a universal language. It is something that would be appropriate for every individual to learn more and to share and to take in. And on top of that, I think, interestingly enough, with the pandemic, here we have this other situation that was such a catastrophic situation. But what will come of it is really what will be the significance. So if we learn from something, and I think what I'm trying to say in the analogy to yoga and its importance is this ability to finally have people become aware of what was it all about, what happened during pandemic, but what did we learn from it? That we do need to understand better ways. There are viruses and things that we don't have a lot of control over, but where science meets wisdom and our ability as individuals to all of a sudden not get lost in all of our distractions in life and to understand our own self, our self-care, our self-awareness, and our purpose, I think there couldn't be a better time for these opportunities. And it really is across the board. It really is multicultural to have that understanding. And where I'm going to come in is hopefully, and Naresh, if you want to go ahead, but as a physician and a practitioner, as a integrative provider, as a yoga therapist, as a constant student, we're always constantly, if we're curious, we want to be more educated. We want to learn more. And I think that's where this little dichotomy is difficult, because if you're living here in the Western culture, we are trained a certain way in medical school and we're very good at taking care of acute problems. But what we've quickly learned is that now comes the paradigm shift, and it's been waiting to come along because what we're doing is not working. So one of the biggest things that we want to try to accomplish is to show clinicians, that could be physicians, yoga therapists, students, etc., that this is a very wonderful additional modality. The knowledge behind yoga, and in our case, yoga therapy and measured yoga therapy, they're unique, but they are modalities that are readily available for practitioners to take advantage of and patients to take advantage of when the traditional things they've worked for have not been effective tools. So I'll talk a little bit more. Why don't I hand it over to you? I'm going to come out of the presentation and the course and try to re-sign in for a minute just to see if I can get more things.
Thank you, Dr. Marshabali. And we will come back to you. And in the meantime, Smita have already introduced me, so there is no need for introducing me again. So I'm just going to forward. Can you see my presentation?
In the meantime, we can also we can still keep the sequence, and maybe there could be one or two questions that people can
ask. That's very good too. That's wonderful. Sure.
So that way we can keep the sequence.
Sure.
I hope we still have time. So Dilip Thatteji had a question. Can you type it in? Because I'm having trouble promoting you to panelist. But Dilip Thatte had a question. Anybody else, if they have questions to Dr. Rajan, please feel free to go ahead and ask.
Dilip Thatte has written down his question.
One question was whether I'm in Maryland. The answer is yes.
Yeah, correct.
Any other questions if anybody has? So I had a question, Dr. Rajan.
Yes.
When we speak of the term nadi, right? Are all nadis supposed to be physical manifestations or manifestations of the physical body? That means, are they material and existent within the body? Because, as we exist, the subtle body and the causal body, right? The spiritual body, it doesn't, we live in so many dimensions. So are some of those nadis actually not physical manifestations, rather they are abstract representations of the communication flow?
Okay. Let me answer it in the following way. Unless there is research done to establish it, we cannot say with confirmation. Okay. However, the starting point of the research that is of interest is what has been done by the Koreans and what is called the primovascular system. And the primovascular system, and we have shared this, there are more than 200 papers on PubMed now, starting with the first paper in 2004. So that is what comes closest to what looks like maybe part of the Nadi system. But the part is, so I cannot tell you with certainty whether it is a physical element or whether it is just something that is a communication pathway without a physical element. Okay. Most probably it is a physical element like the fiber optic cables is my sense.
Now, the reason I say that is because if the dimensions themselves are abstract, so the mind is an abstract dimension, the brain is physical, but the mind is an abstract dimension. And so is the spirit realm. So in those two dimensions, you know, if the communication has to happen between those two abstract dimensions, the communication channel itself also has to have some elements of abstraction.
The thing is, you see, we have to think of the way how the internet is abstract in the sense whether wirelessly or whatever things are connected, right? So there is a communication, whether it is wired or wireless, some part of it is definitely wireless. Okay. Right. But whether it is fully wireless or whether part of it is wired, I think part of it is wired. Okay. And particularly given the evidence that comes from the primovascular system research.
All right.
Give me the pucha question.
Hey, Dr. Rajan.
Yeah.
I quick question. They say there are 72,000 nadis in the body.
But I'll stop. I have no comment on the number of nadis.
Okay, I mean, all the nadis are connected from one central point and the branches going all through the body?
No, that is not how we understand it. In the 5 levels of nadis, the 3 higher levels are of what I described for you.
Okay.
And from there, the lower levels usually come from the chakras.
Okay.
Dr. Maharaj, I have a quick question.
Dilip, we will come. Let's say question answer session at the end of the session, please. And Dilip, we will come to your question again at the end of the session. There will be enough time, and let me start my presentation if you don't mind, and if you permit me. So you're able to listen to me, everybody?
Yes.
Wonderful. So my talk is about yoga for sarcopenia or muscle loss. Okay. Now, my question to ourselves is, can we prevent or reverse sarcopenia? And answer is very simple. Yes, yogic practices, aquatic yoga, deep sleep, functional foods, Ayurvedic cooking, fasting, yoga, even as exercise will help, no doubt. So for those who don't know what is sarcopenia, it's a progressive generalized skeletal muscle disorder involving accelerated loss of muscle mass and function. It does cause the loss of muscle strength, gait speed, endurance capacity. It increases the risk of falls and frailty and mortality. It generally starts in age 30s and worsens as we age. What about the prevalence of sarcopenia? 25 to 45% older adults in US has it. And in other part of the world across the even healthy human beings may have it in a higher prevalence even. 73% American adults are overweight or obese, which increases the risk of sarcopenia, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and some type of cancers. Well, I don't know why it is going backward, but let's see. Okay, what are the potential causes of sarcopenia? Aging is one of them. Sedentary lifestyle is another one, sitting jobs and not able to move our body at all. Stress, food preferences we have. Fatty infiltration is sarcopenic obesity, and I'll be talking a little bit more about it. Inflammation, poor nutrition, chronic illnesses. Somebody got a stroke, they can have a prolonged disability of one leg or two legs and could have a effect on sarcopenia or muscle loss. Neurological disorders, hormonal changes, cancer, and others. Physically inactive people can lose as much as 3 to 5% of their muscle mass each decade after 30. And it accumulates over 8 years. So at age 70 or 60, we may lose about 15 to 30% of our muscle mass, which could be very significant. Why to worry about sarcopenia? What are the medical consequences? Falls, fracture, disability, and premature death are major cause of sarcopenia. They are as a result of sarcopenia. Mobility disorders, impaired ability to perform activities of daily living, lowered quality of life, loss of independence, need for long-term care, increased risk of heart diseases, respiratory diseases, and cognitive impairment. Now here is a cartoon where I put my head on it. And this before, when I came in 73 to America, Canada, I was underweight. My waistline was 29. Over 20 years, my waistline increased from 29 to 37 inches. And I gained weight about 40 pounds or more. And I had a central obesity. Obviously, nobody in the family or friend circle want to tell you that you are overweight or obese, because that's not the way it is. So I went to see my doctor and I say, I'm fat, dumb, and happy. Doctor says, Naresh, you are fat, dumb, and dead. I wish all the doctors could do this in everyday person's life. And they don't usually do that kind of scare a patient to the death. And then they will take some proactive preventive measures. This abdominal obesity here is a risk factor of stroke, heart attacks, diabetes, prediabetes, cancer, and many other osteoarthritis. So this is a cooking in the body of many people. Can we do something about it? Yes, don't be shameful asking a help. If you have a problem, go and ask friend, family, Dr. Narayan or somebody else, or physicians. Education is a very important thing, but I was highly educated and I still couldn't see my abdominal obesity for 20 years. You could be fooled not to be aware of what is cooking in your body. Self-awareness is the most important thing in my opinion, and taking a self-action on it. Self-healing mechanism, yoga is self-healing. Primary care providers, life in yoga, physical trainers, nutrition experts, or wellness consultants can help. In terms of prevention and treatment of sarcopenia, our main goal is to maintain or improve muscle mass and function. Function means strength, mobility, resiliency, stretchability, flexibility, coordination, and balance. Body weight practices, you don't need anything. You need your body and some yoga asanas or postures. You can do it anytime, anywhere, preferably early in the morning. Aquatic yoga will need some jacuzzi and pool side by side. Resistance exercises can also be done at home with bands or weights or machines. Dancing and sports are very good too. any other enjoyable activity that's important to maintain or improve the muscle mass. Scientific evidence is Dr. Pandya wrote a review article on this in 2019. He conducted a study on yoga education program. And his conclusion was that after a few weeks, people start improving their gait speed, muscular strength, and functional performance in women living with sarcopenia. So yoga education program at home or outside in church or any place is an effective long-term prevention for sarcopenia in older women. Seniors can do life in yoga practice and they are doing it. Hundreds of them are benefiting from it. Dr. Narayan also suggests step climbing or walking meditation practices in addition to your gentle yoga practices. Young people can do hatha yoga or any other stretching or pose, including Surya Namaskar, squatting, lunging, and many others. Okay. Now, gentle yoga practice, Dr. Narayan does teach is stretching, strengthening, and movement. It's the supreme ease exercises. He does it according to the Patanjali Sutras, Yoga Sutras. Supreme ease and maximum synchronized with breathing will bring self-healing mechanisms to the mind, body, and spirit. You see, yoga is an art of self-healing. Life in yoga practices provides all the tools and guidance necessary to heal ourselves. Asanas, postures, stretching and motion. Pranayam, breathing exercises. You use your Bhastrika early in the morning for few breaths, 20, 30 breaths. Your energy level will be up if you have a chronic fatigue. Or you do it 3 rounds or 5 rounds or 10 rounds and it will beat the stress. Duration and dose varies from person to person. It can be customized. And for me, it's about 90 minutes once a day or twice a day. For you, it could be 30 minutes. It's affordable, practical, and customized to your need. You can customize it. All right, well, okay. Now, yogic, what Dr. Narayan does, he calls it spinal alignment, but it's actually fine-tuning of the entire body. Almost every joint is involved in. It's one of the examples. It's about 50 to 100 muscles are involved into it. Abdomen, chest, shoulder, neck. Squats, yogic squats, they call it, the name is in South Indian language, and they say repetitive yogi squats with a specific hand movement like this or this. When you go up and down, it improves the attention, cognition, and psychological states. But if somebody does a study, it will also reduce the risk of sarcopenia or sarcopenic obesity. It can be done at home. This is what, when you go down, you inhale. When you come up, you exhale. And this is simple technique. Here are the major muscles of the leg, of the hip and thighs, and they can be built by squatting or by lunging or by any asanas. This is a lunging, and you don't have to do it to extent. You can start with a small lunging or less of the bending like this. Pelvic tilt, Dr. Kunjan does it, Dr. Narayan does it in our hatha yoga practices. It is very good for your back and legs and the entire body. Here are some of the most popular yoga asanas. You can choose any one of them. You don't have to be pro or go very high. Here is a Cobra asana. It's very easy to do it, and it is very good for your pelvic regions. Tripod yoga is my most favorite pose, and I will be talking a little bit more about it. Japanese looked into the brain of people with strong balance, which means they can stand on one leg for 20-30 seconds without falling. Their brain was crystal clear. And those who couldn't do it, their brain was full of biomarkers of stroke and Alzheimer. So there is association between loss of balance and the brain health. So what I'm proposing for it, measuring the duration of standing on one leg, the duration of the one leg standing time in seconds, it can be simple, practical, reliable, affordable way for early diagnosis and prevention of falls and Alzheimer's and maybe other neurological disorders. This work need to be conducted at NIH or NCCIH. The yogic asanas or resistance exercises for sarcopenia, they're simple, effective, affordable, and can be done at home or anytime, anywhere. Here is something which I have been doing for last 35 years. And I published this book in the name of Dr. Gupta's Aquatic Yoga for Chronic Pain. And it's very simple, but it helps within 3 to 7 days, most people can feel their pain is going down by drastically or completely gone. It seems to repair the joints. So what I was impressed with this technique is rapid onset of action and remarkable efficacy and safety in chronic pain. It relieves neck pain, frozen shoulder, lower back, ankle tendonitis, knee osteoarthritis, and plantar fasciitis. I believe it will work in more than 70-80% people if they try for a few days. What I'm thinking about that vibrations of water molecules in alternating heating and cooling milieu seems to activate stem cells and may exert fast repair of the joints and fascia. It warrants more clinical research, and try it in any health club with jacuzzi and pool side by side for 3 to 7 days. You may be surprised, and it really works. This technique helped me in repairing my frozen shoulder, lower back, injured hip with cyst, ankle, and plantar fasciitis. I believe this technique can help helping me to age gracefully, meaning it has slowed my biological aging. Now, next important thing is yoga is part of the solution, but food we eat, greens, beans, nuts, and berries, and exposure to sun, herbs in moderation, and functional foods, and some fermented food, yogurt. Yogurt is very popular in South India. They take it with rice. It's become a very perfect meal. It's probiotic, prebiotic, and probiotic both in combination. So it's a wonderful thing. Of course, do not deprive body with water. So this is a way to provide nutrients to your body. And all right. So these are also purple fruits are wonderful. They are loaded with anti-inflammatory and antioxidative activities. Vibrational sounds resonance open the novel opportunity for regenerative medicine, heart, lung, spine, joint, so on and so forth. These mantras may be Vittal, 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 Vittal may repair your mitral valve prolapse. There are documented testimonies at the Life in Yoga, but we need to do, the science have to come up with more opportunity to test these regenerative mantras or opportunities to be tested in real patients. In summary, as I said, yoga is a part of the solution for prevention and reversal of sarcopenia, and it will prevent fall, fracture, and disability and death. And aquatic yoga will also help. Spinal alignment also help, as well as functional foods. With this, I'll say if you have any comment or question, if we couldn't attend it today, you are very welcome to call me or send me an email. I'll be blessed to work with you. Thank you so much for your time and for your blessings. Now I'm going to go back to Dr. Marsha Willis. If she, okay, wonderful. Let's welcome her again. Give a big round of applause for Dr. Marsha Willis.
Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear, we hear you.
Okay. Great. Okay, so I'm going to talk about again as a family physician here in Michigan, as a osteopathic physician, where we learned our philosophy, which is to treat the body as a whole and understand the significance of the spinal alignment and things. And then as a board certified integrative provider, a yoga therapist, and chairman of the board of Life and Yoga, I feel like I've had the opportunity to draw from so many different parts of my background and continue my education in the path of learning more and more ways to begin to help our patients and the people that I come in contact with to improve their health. So I'm going to just try to briefly look at some general things that we see in clinical practice. One of the main pearls here is that as a physician or a clinician, it is critical to focus on the importance of the history and the triggers or antecedents. They're called the root causes of what's really behind the problem. We will review the role of yoga therapy in practice, one or two brief case studies, and then how will the potential impact of yoga therapy, what amazing benefits can we have on the quality of patient care, a patient's quality of life, and again, become a way of allowing practitioners one more modality to help their patients. So it's not uncommon, each of us knows as a patient or as a clinician that we see these daily medical visits. These are the typical symptoms and chronic conditions that we take care of on a daily basis. And in medicine, we have pretty good ways of dealing with that in the Western culture. We can always draw on our pharmaceutical regimens to kind of work us through these different conditions, which we call kind of a pill for every ill. But when and one thing to bring to everyone's attention again is our next hurdle is going to be dealing with the COVID long haulers. And it's easy that things come along, they come and go, and maybe they don't mean very much to one person versus another. But when you are suffering, as we've had the good fortune to hear of many of these testimonials this afternoon, people suffer greatly. It affects everything. It affects their quality of life and the activities of daily living. And for them to be able to be given hope that there is something more that's out there to help with their conditions, that there can be improvement and or possibly resolution, that's really what medicine's all about, is never giving up. But you need to have an understanding of what modalities you can reach for. And ultimately, whether you're a student, a patient, or clinician, if you really don't know how to do some of these things, that's where Life and Yoga will come in. And you can certainly reach out to the resources and some of the upcoming teachers and training that are available. But there is one thing that really ties it all together, and that really is that everything going on in the body in relation to the symptoms I mentioned, and most conditions are related to this condition or a word we call inflammation. So heat, redness, swelling, pain, loss of function, that's the ultimate sort of thing that's happening with everything from a headache to even diabetes. It's all partially evolving around inflammation. So I always say, you know, what I want to do is when I come in the room and I talk to the patient, and my most important part of the visit, of course, is gaining the history and ultimately they're sharing what tends to be the root cause of some or triggers of their problem, is I want to tell them to go out and do the exercises, you know, choose a better diet and start exercising. But one of the things that we know is that really the only way you can do that is to actually have some form of energy. So this slide I put up here again is just suggesting that we do need some new approaches, even as a physician. And I think that's part of the problem, that if you think about it, physicians are not always individuals who take the best care of themselves. You know, we're under so much stress. We have certain criteria, certain things that we are, you know, we need to accomplish, particularly if we're working for any hospital or organization that's using insurance-based payers. So there's a lot of pressure to try to do things, but the problem is if you ask the patient who's on all of these medications, most of the time they'll tell you when you say, how do you feel? They certainly don't feel well. So, and we absolutely, you know, want to work on increasing people's vitality, energy, and account for ways that they can handle their stress and accommodate and have an outlet for stress. So I tend to go back to, you know, Dr. Kurakov is the Russian scientist, has worked very closely with Dr. Narayan and developing the BioWell machine. And I think he again explains it in a very simplistic way, which I think is important, that the 4 pillars of health do include the endocrine system, the gastrointestinal tract, the autonomic nervous system, and our personal level of emotion and stress. And again, this is what we talk about in integrative medicine as sort of a brain-gut immune connection. So he goes on to just explain in his book that health is ultimately based on the level of energy that we experience every day. And every cell in our body is an energy station, the mitochondria in the body. And by the way, many patients who have chronic fatigue syndrome, and probably now COVID long haulers, are really, they've had a sort of dismantling and a dysfunction of the mitochondria, a part of the anatomy of the cell. So as the energy is depleted, the ill health comes along, and health complaints may be attributed to these functional disturbances in the body. And what's happening, these are slow accumulations of damage over time from everything from toxic exposures, hormone depletions, personal lifestyle choices, and mindset. So what can we offer through yoga as a means of a way to address some of this? And particularly, I put as a contribution to a physician's knowledge base and the medical perspective. So the first thing is to understand the role of energy. And as Dr. Narayan has really graciously presented, you know, the role of the vibrations, the primal vascular system, and looking at this as though it's almost like, I tell patients now, it's a little bit like your electricity, the wiring. And that what we're going to do is we're going to work through, in particular, these chakras, where we're going to channel our mindset to those 7 centers in the hopes of opening up or unblocking these areas of communication, kind of like turning the switch on when you all of a sudden illuminate, you know, the room. So we want to improve the signaling, and we want to tap into the ability for us to trigger the messages to the parasympathetic nervous system via the vagus nerve. So we can create this relaxation response in our patients. And just as a perfect example, I've kind of made it a personal mission that when I enter the room and I learn why the patient is there, I already know mentally in my mind that I'm going to share with them some very simple breathing techniques with an increased expiration or exhalation that's going to trigger their own personal relaxation response. And of course, one of the stories of testimonials was shared about digestion. So many people have gut issues. They're anxious and agitated, they're lacking sleep. And in traditional medicine and traditional society, you know, people wake up, they cannot go without their cup of coffee or their pop to get their caffeine to generate some energy to try to make it through their day. And then when it comes to evening time, of course, then they're wound up and yet they're still tired and then they can't fall asleep, so they need a sleeping pill. And so it becomes sort of a vicious cycle. But yoga really will allow us not only to tap into this brain-gut immune connection, but it's really so much deeper than that. It's tapping into our dharmas, our bigger purpose, our duties, our conduct, our virtues, the right way of living, making good choices, doing good things, being a part of our community. And there's a benefit to doing group yoga therapy that actually initiates a lot of this. It just sort of starts to happen. And I wrote a statement on here that says, you know, can we really think of any medication that would be able to do this and fulfill that? And I do not think there is a medication that can. So we look for all the different elements of yoga, which all of you are probably quite familiar with, but prana, not just being breath, but the life force. Asanas are poses, drishti is our gazes, meditation for calming of the mind, the vibrations, mantras, channeling the energy, reaching through to these nadis and marma points to improve the signaling and restoration of health. So we're really, it's so much deeper. We've already talked about all the different elements of the body besides the physical body, and how measured yoga therapy can tap in on that and how we can ultimately improve function. So one thing, just as a pearl again, is that we know that yoga is not just exercise. It's truly the prana, the breathing itself, and teaching people how to use their own tool. You know, this tool, our breath, resides within us. We just need someone who's a proper teacher to explain how it works and how to use it properly, and how that itself can channel the energy and help with so much healing. So this was a article in the International Journal of Yoga quite a long while ago, in 2011, but it really still stands true. But what I like to use this slide for is really to ask in another way. So sometimes I think an individual who's unfamiliar with yoga tends to be a little bit afraid of yoga, afraid of the word, afraid of what it means, feels like they can't do certain poses. So they're turned off a little bit by it. But if you ask the question a little bit differently and you say, if I could provide you with something that would allow you to live better, sleep better, create relaxation, reduce your stress, anxiety, depression, enhance your mood, improve your immune system, reduce and help support and reduce your addictions, to improve your behaviors, to sleep better, to have more energy, reduce your pain, and improve your muscle tone and your strength, would you be interested in that? And most people, of course, would say yes. And that's when you can say, that's where science meets wisdom, and we're going to teach you some yoga therapy. This was a slide that Dr. Narayan, I know, has used in some of his talks, but it's just putting these elements together in the same statements, which is how do we understand how these practices help with healing. And you can see, again, it's all about communication and focusing on, we look at spinal lengthening, spinal alignment, physical alignment, mindfulness, breathing techniques, and that how this actually sends the messages and links it to the immune system, the nervous system, the endocrine system, cardiac system, GI tract, etc. And I'll show you in a minute when we look at measured yoga therapy, how that just, in essence, it lets us look underneath, what's sort of not at the surface, not something that we can just readily visualize, but it keys us into where the lack of energy is located in all of these systems. And that's where we can trigger the treatment. This is just an example of a case. A typical patient comes in for the day, 45-year-old female. She's got high blood pressure, she's got anxiety, she suffers from heartburn, her shoulder pain. She's had for the right shoulder, it's been for the last few months. She's had an injury in the past. She's on disability. She's on medications for bipolar. She's on Buspar for anxiety, a medication for her blood pressure and heartburn, and she still doesn't feel well. So I initiated a yoga therapy with some alternating nostril breathing, creating some also longer exhalation, getting her feet grounded in the chair. These are all chair exercises, and had her do a technique of neck exercise that we worked on in Life in Yoga, and ultimately created a significant reduction in blood pressure, created relaxation. And then what I have to do is, this is a treatment, this is a prescription, no different than if I had the prescription pad just for the medications. I tell her how many repetitions, how many times per day, when to do them, and then we would recheck her. This case is an example of doing it without the measured yoga therapy, but with measured yoga therapy, you can see very precisely a pre and a post treatment that show whether the technique will be effective. So with Life in Yoga, what we found is that, and this is what I really love about what I do, it's because it's all inclusive. There's no one, essentially no one, that cannot participate in these techniques and these guidances. And yet, on the other hand, when you look at the common way of us as providers saying you should exercise, first you have to meet someone where they're at. They have to be ready to make some of these changes. They have to be more observant. We want them to be a good observer of themselves. And you hear this all the time in daily practice when Dr. Narayanan says, we do 2, 3, 4 rounds of Bhastrika, and then you wait for a minute, close your eyes and observe. What do you see? What do you feel? You make good use of your senses. And so some simple techniques through pranayama, spinal alignment, vibrations. The benefit also is that you're not just going to improve one condition that the patient has. And we've shown this over and over with the measured yoga therapy, that across the board, there are improvements in multiple organ functions and systems with the use of only 1 or 2 simple techniques. So in practice, you have to decide if you're going to do yoga therapy as an individual or as a group. You're all familiar with, most of you are familiar with the group practices. But if you're leading a group practice, it is critical that you still are responsible for everyone in the group. You need to pay attention to form and technique, and to know that some people have some limitations and you need to modify some of the techniques for some individuals. It is all inclusive. It is done in a chair. There are some balance work and exercises that sometimes I do outside of just being seated. But I'm not going to go into that today. There is a positive energy that is coming from being in the group. What's different and it's really lent itself very nicely to our pandemic time, because Zoom has been able to allow us to continue to teach. Whereas individual yoga therapy is the one thing, I just want to leave you with one word, which is customized. And that's the difference. When you really have an individual concern, we can make a program for you and use the measured yoga therapy that will be very much specific to your needs. So again, in just making a comparison, what can you get out of just daily group practice versus, I have patients who, may only do the practice once a week. And we know that in order to engage in a good habit, you have to do it daily. In order to eliminate a bad habit, you've got to make changes. So daily practice, it is really critical. That's the way you're going to get the outcome. And again, the testimonials go to prove that if you've had a condition that's so chronic, that's been around for more than a few weeks to months, it's going to be difficult for it to just respond to any treatment within one day. So it will take time, and we let patients know that. But the benefits of this practice include something called neuroplasticity, increased energy and focus, and that neuroplasticity is critical in shaping the brain and allowing the reduction in things like Alzheimer's. It's giving ability to give new signals to the brain and keeping the brain fresh and active. And these things have actually been documented on MRI. I like this picture. This was just years ago when I started doing yoga therapy at my practice, and this was in a group. And you can see that, again, it's critical to get people to be grounded and connected to the earth just with their feet alone. But you can see different people, different body sizes and shapes. It doesn't matter. They're all able to participate and modify if needed and be seated in a chair. There can be some time constraints. You have to create the right space and environment for this, usually obtaining consent forms. I like to use handouts and practice logs to make the patient accountable, to see what they're really doing, and to find out if they're doing something, did it result in a improvement in their condition. So we have daily online yoga therapy, obviously, more than even once or twice in the day now. And I know it came up as to, well, what if I can't do 1 hour? What if I can't donate an hour and a half? I think you end up taking on parts of the practice that you think are the most beneficial, and doing the practices before eating. And like I said, just making it a daily practice in some fashion. There are some small liabilities, I think, to do this as a physician in particular. Cost is a lot of what we've been doing is donation based. So most of it would be affordable, although unfortunately not covered by insurance. This is just an example of a handout that I would give to a patient. So briefly, for a matter of time, sake of time, you were made aware of measured yoga therapy. Again, it's a little bit customized, just like people think about physical therapy, but it focuses on the area of the body that may be out of balance. We use this BioWell machine. Again, we've talked about how people's circumstances may change constantly. It is not a diagnostic tool. So what I wanted to have you look at it is, this is what a measurement would look like once the patient puts their fingers, as Dr. Narayan said, when your fingers go in the machine, 10 fingers, you get those pictures of those fingerprints, and they have specific connections to elements, 5 elements, as well as different locations within the body itself, the anatomy. But there's a measurement of the stress within the body, the energy within the body, the balancing of the organ systems. This was a case study where I had a woman who was in her, I think, later 50s, who had just had actually bariatric surgery 6 weeks prior. She was doing pretty well. She also had a history of something called pseudotumor cerebri. She had come in the office, it was very hectic. She got caught up in traffic, and so her blood pressure was elevated. And so I asked her to do a neck exercise. And again, each exercise we talk about is movement, but with breath and movement and awareness. So she initiated the technique, and the post measurement is in the dark color, where you can see her stress level became more optimal, her energy improved, and she got an improvement in the balance of the systems. But again, what this really proved is I didn't just improve her blood pressure. It did go down. Her reading definitely went down from 156/88 to 130/80, but that wasn't the only effect. In fact, she said to me that was the best and most calm she had felt in weeks. So it was a stress reliever for her, gave her more energy, lowered her blood pressure. One technique, no side effects, no cost like the medication she's on. And our hopes are that patients will be able to maybe eliminate some of their medications. But I do want to make a statement again, it's always kind of working together in coordination with your personal provider, not to just go stopping things without the consultation of your practitioner. This was not the same patient, but just to show you a pre and post reading with the treatment. Could be something like the chakra, the bija mantras or vibrations. You can see actually the way these 7 energy centers are and how there was more energy and alignment in the post practice, and the organ systems change from orange to green. And what we usually do pre-treatment is, again, look at the areas where there's low energy. You can see in this example that she had low energy in the immune system. And I don't know great ways to measure that in traditional medicine. There are markers, blood markers, that can look for certain immune conditions, but it's just not exactly the same. So this is the end of my presentation. So whether you are the practitioner trying to bring yoga therapy into your practice, whether you are the student, whether you are the patient, it really is the same thing. When you're looking at your car, when you get into your car, the first thing you do is you kind of look at the dashboard, you look at your oil level, you look at the level of the tank of gas, you're watching your speed, your climate control. It's all observation, and you want to kind of do the same thing for yourself, is start to focus on yourself in terms of what has been going on over time. What do you think was the one event, trigger, something that happened that set off some of these other things that have led to what would be maybe a downward type spiral? Look at working together with a practitioner, a yoga therapist, or Life in Yoga to try to find the one yoga treatment or a couple treatments that are going to make the biggest difference, much as examples have been shared with us today. And we're welcoming of referrals and seeing more patients, but it takes the investment of the patient. You have to be the one who wants to do the work. You have to be open-minded. You have to be wanting to make some improvements and realize what it is that works for you. That's inclusive of diet and body types and doshas. They're all going to be a little different for each person. Keep a log, track your, we can provide you with handouts on how to do these safely and effectively, these different types of movements and breathing techniques. We usually would check somebody back within a week to 3 weeks to see how they're coming along. And with measured yoga therapy, we would be able to remeasure where they stand. A lot of times there will ultimately be a resolution of something, and maybe there's something else that occurs. So again, one treatment, multiple benefits. So in summary, I wonder, this whole year, we're now past a year since pandemic started, and how has life changed this year for each of us? How do we analyze the status of our health, our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being? Where are the places that we might need to fill in some of the gaps? What are the things that we can make available to you that will be helpful, safe, efficacious tools? And one of those we believe is yoga and yoga therapy, and something that we tend to do in a chair as opposed to getting down on the floor. What role will yoga therapy play for you personally or in your clinical setting? And so the goal is obviously to enhance your endurance. That's what we're seeing with some of the mantras with some of the patients that were given treatments for post-COVID. Performance, really as it relates to having more energy, better balance and purpose, enhanced health. How this can, in the end, determine a better, be cost efficient. Everyone wins. I call it mindful energetic relaxation. And I was thinking after the last lecture, when you look at sarcopenia and you look at osteopenia and osteoporosis, we tend to want to wait till patients are well into their 60s to do simple tests to find out if they have these kinds of medical problems. But if we focus on yoga therapy and interventions as young as even children in school, the dietary changes that were mentioned, we can have such a much more, a larger impact on society. And as I like to say in this book that's called How Yoga Works, it isn't even at all about any of the physical asanas. It's really about how you connect on a higher level, find your purpose, and become a better human being to enhance your community, your health, your family, your friends, and the world in general. And that's why it all comes back to the universal language of this wonderful day of International Yoga. So I thank you for your time and for allowing me to be a part of it.
Thank you so much for your enlightening lecture. That's wonderful. Now we'll open it for question and answers, especially the medical professionals first, and then others too. We have plenty of time. I think we have about 29 minutes. So I welcome all of you. Dr. Sita Gupta, thank you for joining us. She has been supporting our program for last 7 years. And I'm very thankful to you. You could join us. Asha have been involved into these sessions, and I'm thankful to her as well. And all of you have come and stayed here, 60 people. That's wonderful. You made my day, and now is your time to initiate some questions. Dr. Kulkarni has a question, and let her speak. Please, Dr. Narayan, you have to unmute Dr. Kulkarni.
Everybody should be able to unmute themselves.
Yes, I think you can hear me. Can you?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Billis, I agree with you on your talk. As a origin of a long term, I agree with all the benefits of yoga. I personally do it. We all understand Dr. Narayan. We take part in his program regularly. But my biggest problem, as we discussed in our separate group, is how can we make it? I know somebody had asked a question. One item may not fit all, but just introducing the whole thing in a general setting, not as an individual practitioner, but as a general setting. And as you know, most individual practitioners don't exist. And by next 2 or 3 years, it is termed that 75 to 80% of the medical practice is going to be either group or organizational, which is either hospital or big groups like Kaiser and all that. So I think it is very good to do it to fit one person, but I think we have to start off trying to fit everybody in the beginning. Once a person sees the benefit initially, like if I have a GI problem and my GI problem gets better in a week or two, it is great. I will go and look for more options by myself. But if you join a whole group where there are benefits for different people, I think it should be a group approach than a joint approach, because the medicine has changed. When I started 45 years ago and now, the practice of medicine has changed tremendously. It's no longer an individual practice where we had a lot of time to talk to individual patients. It is now, how many cows can you pass through the barn? It's like automated. So I think there should be an approach generally, which I had talked to Dr. Narayan also, like putting in group practices, approaching hospitals to say, give us about 5 minutes audio, 5 minutes pamphlets and things like that. Because that individual approach we all had the pleasure of doing years ago is not, I think, practical in bigger cities, especially in bigger centers. But if MD Anderson can adopt a group system, I think our approach should be for any type of yoga, especially the Tantra yoga, what Dr. Narayan uses, which is not very well known, should be addressed to bigger groups of people. That is my 2 cents worth of opinion.
So I'll answer the question a couple different ways. First of all, I do very much agree with you. And through an evolution of change in the medical, in our field, there are so many differences. I do work for a big hospital as the main job that I'm doing. And I'll share a couple things with you and answer, I think Tammy may have asked a question also, what happens when you get a little resistance from a patient who doesn't seem to want to be on board with maybe an integrative approach or yoga. The way I've been approaching it now, I do some of both. Okay, so I have an opportunity to go in the room and to work with an individual patient. I find it, they're there for them. There's an individual need. They're unique. They need something to change. If they need change, what can I offer them? So I just listen to the reason that they're really there. And as we're sitting there, I observe, are they nervous? Is their blood pressure up? Sometimes within 2 minutes, they've shared something very traumatic. I mean, they've lost family members to COVID. I had a patient last week. I met him for the first time. His daughter was pregnant and she died and they were able to deliver the baby. So he has a 1-year-old granddaughter from the same daughter. Now he's going to be taking on a 5-month-old that hasn't even left the hospital yet. That's a very, tragic and traumatic, life-altering event. So I listen like we all do as good providers. And then I just take that opportunity before I'm about to, I sum it all up. And then I say, I'm going to ask you to do something for me. While you're sitting in that chair, let me ask you to just, plant your feet, root your feet, sit up a little taller. And I just start to ask them to initiate a breath in the nose and out the nose. And by the way, some of this is very foreign to many patients. They don't think at all about how they breathe. They're congested in their nose. They're still got their phone in their hand while they're trying to maneuver stuff going on at home and stuff going on with me. So I just try to again get some focus going, focus on themselves, focus on being themselves an observer of themselves, and then just point out to ask of them to just do a simple longer exhalation than inhalation. Or if they're very nervous, they have panic, they are anxious, then I'll do like the I'll do lumbaloma, I'll do alternating nostril breathing. It takes literally about 2 minutes to give them this information. I don't even tell them that they're doing yoga therapy. I just ask them to do it. I observe them, they observe themselves. Then I ask them to pause for a minute. How do you feel? Most of them say, I feel quite a bit better. I feel calmer. Or maybe we uncover that they do have an issue with, something in the nostril, whatever it is. Then I tell them, I may say to them, you just did a little yoga therapy. How did it feel? Most of the time it feels good. I say to them, I want to have you make this part of your treatment. So right there and then I capture the opportunity to teach and to find out if it works and if they're interested. And I ask them to engage in it. And I would say 80 to 90% of the patients I've done that with, when I see them back a week later, a month later, 6 weeks later, I always ask, so how did it go with that yoga therapy? How are you doing with that? Are you doing it? And most of them will say, yes, I'm actually doing it. It helps. I try to do it. Not everyone does it every single night, but they are. So I'm already trying to plant the seed.
Okay.
The second thing that you suggest is extremely valuable, which I've been doing all along since the Monday I left 2014, Life in Yoga, the yoga is medicine for providers. I mean, I initiated and just said to individual patients, hey, you know what? I have something I think would be really good for you. It's called yoga therapy. We do it in a group. We really only had been doing it once a week. We didn't do it on a daily basis. And the patients who have the chronic issues tended to come. And they would come and it would be the exact same response. Gee, my knee felt a little better after practice. My pelvic, the control of my bladder got better. And little by little, through time, I've been initiating more of the chakras, more of the vibrations, and it's a part of the practice every single time. And the patients who really come and benefit from it and are diligent with it, they tell you that it really has changed something in their life. They sleep better, their weight is down. We've had lots of cases with effects on diabetics and et cetera. But I want to just share one last thing, because we can always look at this from all sorts of different sides. But here's the other side. When I go to that practice has an office manager who has a meeting with the staff, usually once a month. And that's when they sit there and they go over everything that's going on to be able to improve on everything that we're doing. And they do something where they take in all the comments from patients. They want to know the pros and the cons to know if we're doing a good job. What did they think of the provider? What did they think of the visit? And one day I was sitting there in the group. It was my first day. I'm in this brand new practice after I've kind of been deployed through COVID to a different location. And they kind of knew a little bit that I was doing some of these things. And the group, the staff, turned to me and said, that yoga therapy that you talk about, do you think you could teach us that one time while we're having a lunch meeting? So in essence, people are begging for an outlet. And if you can provide it, I don't think it matters. It's I have a friend where she say, it's about lighting one candle in the darkness. It's one life. It could be one life at one time. But if The group, they feed on each other. They get energy from being together. They get calmness from being together. I've had patients, they've exchanged numbers. They're friends. They go walk together at the community center. It's a stepping stone, but we have to understand we have a lot of power to do things for patients that are way beyond just the limitations set forth by insurance. And I think that's what draws you to the profession. You're only going to stick with it because deep in your heart and your soul, you know that those are the reasons that you're still here doing this work. And I'm so passionate about it and excited. Rajan knows we've spent a lot of years now together. And this, just every time I come to one of these, I am just so blessed to know that everyone I'm surrounded with within Life in Yoga and beyond in this circle are so brilliant. Everyone here today is such a wonderful, brilliant, kind, thoughtful, intelligent, person who really is just looking to better themselves, but to better the broader sense. So thank you for even allowing me to participate. And they're only my own experiences. That's what I can share. But I always feel like there's a remedy. If one way doesn't work, there's another way around it. And you know your patients and your practice, and they love you. And they will just take whatever you can give them as something that they appreciate.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right on that. So we have one more point of approach, improving this is the office manager of the public relations in a bigger group. I think those are people, if we can educate them, it may be a better approach. So we have added one more armamentarium to our big thing.
Actually, that was my question, and you read my mind, Dr. Kulkarni. I retired from NIH 2.5 years ago, and I wanted to volunteer there in their clinic. And they will not accept me. I could teach a lot of things, but they will not accept because I'm not certified. So I'm going to bring back the question to you as a chairperson of Life in Yoga. Why don't you recruit and certify people like me who are relatively healthy, can teach these techniques and will not cost too much? Or I wanted to do it for my own uplifting, not for money. Because I just have a social security and a little pension, I'm happy. I'm not about money. So think about it, how we can, or how Life in Yoga can give sessions on internet and take a test on internet, provide them certification of basic level, medium level, or upper level, whatever the capabilities are. In hospitals, you can teach breathing exercises mostly.
Yeah.
You are not going to teach them asanas. So think about it and discuss it within the group at Life in Yoga with Dr. Narayan especially, and think about it, how you can certify us who want to serve.
Well, that's already happening. Yeah, go ahead, Raj.
May I answer that question? The answer is we are in the process of doing that, but remember one thing, we are one institution. When we give any kind of certification, there has to be a general recognition across other institutions also the standards are correct. So through the Council for Yoga Accreditation Institution, organization, that's a membership of other institutions, we are instituting this process. And the only reason that has taken longer time than we had planned was because as we start working with we actually set the exams in 2015 itself. But what happened was, as we went along down the road, we needed to find a proper definition of yoga, because if you look at yoga standards created elsewhere, they say you have to know this asana to be qualified as a person who is an instructor and things. And you and I know yoga is not about any one asana, but it's more about a system. And so we are creating that as part of the Council for Yoga Accreditation International. And
it has to be affordable, Dr. Narayan, because everybody is not rich. So if there are any other question or comments from the attendees, please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask a question. Because we have only 14 minutes left.
Okay, I have a question.
Kumar, please go ahead.
So you read my mind, like how Dr. Sunanda read your mind. You read my mind and you asked those questions about different layers of expertise. Anyway, that has been answered. My next question was in the CME course, Dr. Sarkar spoke about Medicare recognition of holistic practice in one of the, in LA or some place where the certification has been given to them, where Medicare patients can go for cardiac related things. Is Life in Yoga anywhere near getting some kind of certification in those regards? Because I'm sure most of the population visits the cardiologist at least once a year or twice a year, something like that, for a checkup.
No, actually what Dr. Sarkar mentioned is about a program called the Spectrum program that was created by a cardiologist called Dean Ornish from Stanford University. Okay, so now what happens is that even before Dean Ornish introduced it and it got certified, he was funded by a huge grant from the National Institute of Health. And being part of the Stanford University Medical School staff, he got the grant, he did the study with large volume of patients, had it published, and then he got all of that done. Okay, so the now that kind of publication and this thing we have not been able to do. Now there is also something that we do differently. When Dr. Ornish did it, he did it with the approach of one size fits all. Okay, in other words, what happens is, for anybody who is of this cardiac patient, this is what you do. And in fact, if you want to be certified by Dean Ornish's group, they will tell you, you need to have a vegetarian kitchen and you have so much this thing. So they plan whole lifestyle, including food, yoga practice and all of that. And people need to go there every day. Okay, so that is how it has been built. So from our perspective, we customize a lot to people, right? Now, what we do as a general yoga program over here, if we took a systematic survey, we would find that it has had tremendous benefit over here. And of course, it's a free program. And so maybe you have given me an idea. Maybe we should quantify the numbers and then publish it and see whether we can have our sequence of our yoga program made into, you know, a Medicare as a this thing kind of thing, right? Supported. Excellent idea.
Yes.
And I can see Tammy's eyes are brightening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, we can take the telomerase measurement with the people who did the yoga practice for a year or more and those who didn't. And that will be a very quantitative measurement of the effect of yoga on aging, biological aging. So something like that, simple. Somebody have to get a little grant or something, or from clinical perspective, it can be done easily.
Actually, Nareshji, I'm going to ask you a favor. Within our daily yoga group, if we can get a written statement from everybody and if you could compile it about how long they have done yoga and what are the benefits that they have seen, then what happens is we'll compile it and we will publish it and we can use that as a basis for a grant in the way in which you're thinking.
I'll be blessed to do it.
Yes, please go ahead, do it.
Sure. Please, if there is any other question or comments, only 9 minutes left. I assume silence is telling me no other further discussions or questions. So I take an opportunity to be blessed by all of you. And this blessing is going to go to the rest of the world in this YouTube format. And I'm going to write a little essay about it, what was the major theme of it. I have to go through this presentation again. I'm a writer. I have written about 200 articles on whatever I learned during last 2.5 years. So I'm blessed that you already, 59 of you or 50 of you is still surviving on Father's Day with everything else you gave up. Amit and everybody else, my dear friends, thank you so much for your blessings. and for your presence in this context. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Namaste, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
God bless.
Dr.
you.
Naresh
We are
and Dr.
beginning our
Narayan,
regular session at 5:30.
That's right. That's true.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naresh ji and everybody else.
Thank you. Thank you so much.